Chapter 491. Among the 7 ferocious beasts, several of them had never shown their faces in public, except when the tribe was migrating. This was the first time they came out of the ferocious beasts' forest, so they were very excited. The ferocious beasts living in the ferocious beasts' forest, even if they lived with human beings, were still ferocious. When they looked at people or things, they even made people feel a flash of cold light. Most of the 1,000 people who came out of the ferocious beasts' forest were intermediate and senior totem warriors, which puzzled people who saw them. The Wuxia tribe, which was closest to the Yanjiao tribe, had been paying close attention to the situation of the Yanjiao tribe. When they saw the ferocious beasts in the team, they were shocked. No wonder none of the Wuxia beasts they sent came back. They might not have been killed by the Yanjiao people, but they might have been eaten by the Yanjiao ferocious beasts. The people who were monitoring near the ferocious beasts' forest often heard the strange cries of the ferocious beasts. They used to take pleasure in other people's misfortune, thinking that the Yanjiao people must have encountered the ferocious beasts in the forest. Now when they saw these beasts, they knew that it was not them who encountered trouble, but the ferocious beasts raised by their tribe. Do you think there are any other ferocious beasts in the Yanjiao tribe besides these beasts? A man of the Wuxia tribe who was monitoring the ferocious beasts' forest asked his companion next to him. I don't know. They live in the forest full of ferocious beasts. Who knows if they have other ferocious beasts? No matter whether the Yanjiao people had other ferocious beasts or not, if the chief ordered them to take this opportunity to attack the Yanjiao tribe, he would definitely hide behind the team. It was safer that way. But look at the Yanjiao people who went out in a hurry. What on earth happened to make them so anxious? Another man of the Wuxia tribe said. He just accidentally exposed his position. If it was in the past, the Yanjiao people would definitely chase after him. But this time, he just ran 2 steps and found that the Yanjiao people didn't mean to stop at all. They didn't even look at him. It's really strange. I thought the Yanjiao people were going to fight with us. I was so scared. Don't think too much. Let's go back and report to the leader first. Not only were the people of the Wuxia tribe full of doubts, but the Yanjiao team was hard to ignore. Moreover, after leaving the forest, this team seemed to be going straight to their target. Except for a short rest and exchanging food with other tribes on the way, they did nothing else. The robbers didn't dare to make a move on this team. Some travel teams even went over to talk to them during their break, hoping to get some information. Unfortunately, the people in this team didn't care about them at all. Yanjiao's team was guarded against by all the tribes they passed by, but they simply ignored them. They only had one goal now, and that was the desert. What are the Yanjiao people trying to do? The Mang tribesmen who received the news were bewildered. Because of Xiao Xian's disappearance in the desert 2 years ago, the Yanjiao people had lost contact with the other tribes. Later, when several tribes organized to go to the desert, they didn't call the Yanjiao people. But now, what did the Yanjiao people want? In the past 2 years, the Yanjiao tribe had been very low-key. Other than sending people to the desert from time to time, they didn't do anything else that attracted attention. But now, the Yanjiao tribe, which had been low-key for 2 years, was acting so ostentatiously. And the leader was the Yanjiao leader, Ao. What were they trying to do? Were they finally going to attack a tribe? Every tribe who received the news was paying attention to Yanjiao's movements. Even if they didn't take the Yanjiao people seriously before, after seeing this team, they stopped looking down on them. Until they received news that the Yanjiao team was heading in a certain direction, and that direction led to the desert. Were the Yanjiao people going to war with the slave masters? Some people were worried, some mocked, and some just wanted to watch the show. Ao didn't care about other people's gazes and discussions. He led the team straight to the desert. It had been many days since he left the fearsome beast forest, but he still couldn't calm down. That day, the fire seed in the fire pit suddenly surged without any ceremony or anyone by the fire pit. The shaman stood by the fire pit for a while, then gave the order. The shaman told them two things. 1. Xiao Xian was coming back. 2. There might be more than one person coming back. The incomplete fire seed is about to become complete. The shaman's words set off a storm in Ao's heart. Even now, thinking about it made him tremble with excitement. For so many years, generation after generation, how many Yanjiao ancestors had died with hatred? Ao never thought that he would encounter so many things during his time as the leader. Whether it was returning to the old land or the other half of the fire seed, it was enough to make every Yanjiao person ecstatic. In the future, he would be able to meet his ancestors with satisfaction. The other half of the fire seed. Could it be that Xian went missing to find the other half of the fire seed? How many people came back with Xian? Pack up, we're going to the desert today. Ao turned to the others in the team and then looked at Caesar who was lying on the ground. Can you detect Xian's presence? Caesar shook his head slightly. The distance was too far. It seemed to be in that direction, but he wasn't sure. However, he sensed that there was another strange guy in the desert. Seeing Caesar staring in the direction of the desert, Ao didn't care. He didn't think much about it. He got up and asked Tua, who was more familiar with the surrounding area. Then he led the team to the Rain tribe to get some food and water. Now, Yang Sui was almost in charge of the Rain tribe. Why? Because he could ask for rain. The people of the Rain tribe now worshipped Yang Sui like a treasure. Even the chief's status was far lower than his. In the past 2 years, every time the Yanjiao people came to the desert, they would rest in the Rain tribe for 2 days. So Yang Sui also knew that Xiao Xian was missing. When he heard that the Yanjiao people were going to the desert to find Xiao Xian, Yang Sui was very happy. He also lent several rainstones to the Yanjiao people. The desert was too hot and dry. The rainstones could condense water and make the Yanjiao people feel better. Not to mention the warriors in the team, the ferocious beasts didn't seem to live in dry areas. They might not be able to adapt to the desert environment. The high-quality rainstones were very precious. Yang Sui lent several of them. If the Yanjiao people took them away and didn't return them, the people of the Rain tribe would cry to death. If it were other people who did this, the people of the Rain tribe would never agree. However, it was Yang Sui who lent the rainstones. He was the shaman, so he had to continue supporting him. Yang Sui was grateful to Xiao Xian. He knew that the matter of praying for rain had something to do with Xiao Xian. Now he could help the Yanjiao people, which was also a kind of gratitude. Yang Sui originally wanted to lend some camels to the Yanjiao people, but Ao refused. He thought camels were too slow, and there were not many camels here. The woman next to Yang Sui became nervous when she heard that he wanted to borrow camels. Besides, they were in a hurry this time. There were nearly 1,000 people in Ao's team, and only a dozen camels were not enough to share. If they encountered those crazy slaves in the desert, they might not be able to protect all the camels. Not long after staying in the Rain tribe, Ao led the team into the desert. Most of the Yanjiao people had never been to such a place. At first, they were not used to it. Fortunately, they were strong and got used to it after a few days. However, several ferocious beasts in the team had thick fur and were not in a good state of mind. I didn't expect the desert to be so hot. Mao wiped the sweat from his forehead. It was Lei and Tua who brought people to the desert several times before. He had never been here. Now, even Sia was about to become a roasted pig, let alone himself. Fortunately, the Rain tribe shaman gave us these rain stones. Otherwise, the situation would be more difficult. Tua looked around. He could only judge the direction according to the sun. The sand dunes in the desert were always changing. Even if he had been here several times, he could not identify the location according to the appearance of the sand dunes. The best thing is to find a place to rest first and continue when it's dark. Ao thought so too, but before he could say anything, Caesar, who had been quiet all this while, seemed to have noticed something and looked around vigilantly. "What's wrong?" Ao asked. The other ferocious beasts were not abnormal. Anyway, it was always good to be careful. Ao made a gesture behind him. The originally dispirited people quickly adjusted their state and became alert. Along the way, they had encountered some scattered forces harassing them. They had also been attacked by ferocious beasts in the desert. But this was the first time that only Caesar noticed it and the others did not respond. But soon, the other ferocious beasts began to become restless and alert. For a moment, only the low growls of the ferocious beasts could be heard. Swoosh swoosh swoosh, the sound of flowing sand was heard. Small black dots appeared in everyone's vision. Moreover, these black dots were increasing rapidly, fighting to emerge from under the sand. Oh no! It's the insect tide. Why is there an insect tide here? Everyone, be careful. Ao raised the stone knife in his hand and shouted. As soon as he turned his head, he saw Caesar running to the front. When Ao led the people into the desert, Xiao Xian and the rest were still walking in the sea. Every step Xiao Xian took, the seawater in front of him would be split open. At the same time, the same length of the stone path behind the team would be submerged by the seawater. These days, they had been eating the dried meat and grains that they had prepared beforehand. The main thing was the 1,000-grain gold that they had harvested last year. The 1,000-grain gold was very filling. Otherwise, they would have starved to death. They drank the water stored in the pot and the water condensed by Xiao Xian's rain stone. Sometimes, they would catch some creatures that lived in the seaweed. They would catch them before they escaped and eat what they could. Even though the water and food they brought could barely support such a large team, everyone became very weak after a long time. Some of the children's faces were now sunken. Hold on, we're almost there. Chapter 492. The further they walked, the clearer Xiao Xian could feel the bone ornament's power weakening. In the beginning, the water kept a distance from them. As the water grew closer, they had no choice but to cut in and squeeze. It was their first time leaving the place they'd lived in for so long. It was their first time walking on such a strange stone path. After the initial novelty, all that was left was anxiety. They were afraid of the tall walls on both sides. They were worried that the bone ornaments would run out of power. They were worried that the water would crash down and drown them. It was only here that they realized how small they were. Of course, there was also uncertainty about the future. There were many people in the group. They did the same thing every day. They were used to it. But what about the future? They didn't know what it would be like. But as long as the tribe existed, everyone would be together. Even if they had to die together, they were willing. Xiao Xian looked up ahead. Although all he saw was water, he could feel a familiar presence. The first slave, the blue beetle, was there. Other than that, there was another. The smile in Xiao Xian's eyes grew deeper. Soon. Don't worry, someone's here to get us, said Xiao Xian. He sensed Caesar's presence. Compared to Sapphire's beetle, Caesar's connection with Xiao Xian was weaker. If he wasn't close enough, he wouldn't have sensed him. In other words, Caesar was waiting at the other end of the stone path. Since Caesar was here, there must be other Yanjiao people. The shamaness and Caesar wouldn't let Caesar come alone. Xiao Xian told the shamaness, Zheng Luo and the rest about what he sensed. Everyone perked up at the news. What were they worried about? They wouldn't accept it. They'd learned a lot of Yanjiao's secrets along the way. They knew that there was another Yanjiao tribe on the other side of the sea. The two tribes used to be one, but something happened 1,000 years ago and they separated. Now, they were going to merge into a whole Yanjiao. As they got closer and closer to the target point, the sea walls on both sides also had obvious changes. The sea walls were gradually lowering, and the entire stone path was actually concave in an arc. Therefore, the closer they were to the sea, the lower the sea walls on both sides would naturally be. As the walls lowered, Yang Guang made the path much brighter. The bone ornament's power was still weakening. On the stone path, the first half of the path was the bone ornament's own power. When it could no longer support itself, if there was no power to take over, the space it created would become smaller and smaller. The water on both sides would come closer and closer, and eventually, someone in the group would be drowned. Xiao Xian knew that the ancestors could only help them so far. They had to rely on themselves. Since he'd brought so many people into the sea, Xiao Xian had to bring them out too. He took out a fire crystal. Just like how he pushed snow in the snow, he imitated the ornament's actions to push down the parts it couldn't support. It took a lot of energy to hold on. Xiao Xian couldn't do it on his own. He had to rely on the fire crystals. This was why he always carried them with him. So, when the last person in the group was prepared to be submerged, he realized that the water that touched his heels had moved away from him, maintaining a distance of half a step. Knowing what Xiao Xian was doing, the shamaness took out a bag of fire crystals and gave it to him. She was still being carried, or she wouldn't be able to keep up with the group's speed. She couldn't move freely, so she had to rely on Zheng Luo to pass the crystals. When Xiao Xian used up a fire crystal, Zheng Luo handed him another. At the other end of the stone path, above the cliff, Yanjiao's team had already arrived. They were shocked and they encountered the insect swarm. They didn't expect that the giant insect would bring Caesar here. Of course, the team followed them here. This is where Xian fell? Gigu asked. There were two team leaders in the tribe, Gigu and Ta. One of them had to stay behind to guard the tribe. In the end, because Gigu had a bird that could scout in the sky, he could come out with the team. Ta stayed behind to guard the tribe. Cha-Cha had disappeared for a long time. No one could find it. Now, the only one in the tribe that could scout was Gigu's snow-white falcon. It should be here. Ao thought of how Xiao Xian had been forced to jump down from here. He was furious. But now, there was no Snowfield City, no Fire Hill City, only Rock Hill City. The Jinjiawi of Snowfield City were all slaughtered. Then we'll wait here? Gigu asked. Ao looked at Caesar, who was squatting next to the cliff, and said, let's wait here. Caesar looked in the direction of the sea. Would Xiao Xian come out of the sea? Ao and others were puzzled. They could only wait here. If there was a chance, they would climb down the cliff and spear a few fish. If there were giant fish, they would not dare to go into the water. They dared to provoke the giant beasts in the forest, but they did not dare to provoke the ones in the water. Their swimming skills were not as good as the fish. Day by day, they did not see a person jump out of the sea. Until one day, Caesar suddenly howled towards the sea. The people who were skinning the fish immediately dropped the things in their hands and came to the edge of the cliff to look into the distance. Look, what is that? Is it a fire? Nonsense, how can there be fire in the sea? Hey, it seems to be true. All the people in the team came to the edge of the cliff and stood in a long row along the edge of the cliff. Why is there a fire in the sea? Is it made by Xian? Gigu wondered. On the blue sea, the fire was too conspicuous. It was obviously not the light reflected by the sun. It was moving. Caesar next to him howled again, his 4 feet impatiently stepping on the ground. He wanted to go over, but unfortunately, he could not fly, so he could only stand here and worry. Is there someone down there? As the fire on the sea got closer and closer, they saw something moving under the narrow gap with the fire. Not only that, everyone in the Flaming Horn tribe felt a stronger and stronger feeling. They could feel the totemic flame in their minds. When they were not in battle, the totemic flame was unusually active, as if it was waiting for something good to happen. They could clearly feel this feeling, as if a missing part of their body was about to be filled with excitement and anticipation. Thinking of the shaman's words when they set off and connecting it with the feeling now, Ao's heart beat faster and faster. His clenched hands were full of sweat, and he stretched his neck to look at the sea. Ao, Gigu, and the others were staring at the fire on the sea. They were so engrossed in it that they did not notice that something was approaching them from behind. A few soldiers were bumped into and impatiently turned back with their elbows. "Why are you bumping into me? I'm looking. Don't knock me down," the soldier said as he felt something was wrong. It seemed that something was blocking the light. He turned his head and saw a big lump. Facing such a big beetle, the muscles on the soldier's face twitched, and he moved to the side. The other soldiers in front of him hurriedly made way for it. Although they were not afraid of such a giant beast, they had hunted many ferocious beasts that were bigger than this insect in the forest. However, this was different. This was the leader of the insect army. If they accidentally angered it, they did not know if it would let its insect army sweep over. It was not a good thing to encounter an insect army in the desert. The big blue beetle stood on the edge of the cliff and looked ahead. Then, with a puff, it opened its wings. The people standing in a row along the cliff glanced at the big blue beetle. They saw it flapping its wings and flying towards the fire on the sea. The Yinzhou people were speechless. "Damn it, this thing can fly." Gigu thought for a while and let his white falcon fly over to take a look. Xiao Xian was holding on, trying his best to control the opening of the stone path. Even with the fire crystals, he still needed to expend a lot of energy. Now, he was almost exhausted, and his muscles were aching. However, the shore was right in front of him. He could even smell the subtle sand and dust in the air. Sensing something, Xiao Xian did not have time to wipe his sweat. He looked up at the sky. The people in the team also heard the flapping of wings and looked up. Seeing the familiar big blue lump rolling over, Xiao Xian smiled. "Long time no see, Sapphire." Hearing Xiao Xian's words, Zheng Luo motioned for the people behind to stay put. The people in the team saw the big blue bug fly down, following right above Xiao Xian's head. There was a bird call in the sky. It was not Cha-Cha's voice, but Gigu's white falcon. Since it was here, then Gigu and the others must be here too. Xiao Xian heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. He threw away the white powder in his hand and gestured for Zheng Luo to pass him another one. "We're here. There's only a short stretch left. Everyone, hold on. Our brothers will come to support us." Saying this, Xiao Xian asked the people in the team to let Sapphire bring the elderly and children who could not hold on any longer to shore. Zheng Luo picked 3 people first, 1 elderly and 2 children. They were not in good condition. They were sick and had been carried on someone's back. They were unconscious now. Receiving Xiao Xian's orders, Sapphire grabbed the 3 people. Its first reaction was to wrap them up into a ball and bring them away. But then it thought, these were living people. It was its first time carrying living people. Seeing Sapphire take them away, the people in the team relaxed. They also felt a sense of familiarity that could not be ignored. It was like a blood connection. On the cliff, Ao had already seen the people. He ordered the people who brought Sapphire back to take care of them. "Where's the rope? Prepare the straw rope." Ao shouted. "Chief, we don't have enough rope. We used it when we were catching fish." Ao thought for a moment and looked around. His gaze fell on the animal skin clothes tied around his waist. It was too hot during the day, so most of them were topless. When the night turned cold, they would wear the clothes. Now, he took off the clothes. "No rope. Then use this." If 1 piece of clothing was not enough, would 1,000 pieces not be enough? Their animal skins were all made from fearsome beast skin. They were tough and would not break easily. Ao rubbed his red eyes as he put on the animal skin coat. Why did he suddenly want to cry? The flames in the sea were getting closer and closer to shore. The people on the stone path could already see the people standing on the cliff. "Hello, my long-lost brother." Chapter 493. It had to be said that the way Xiao Xian brought this group of people back far exceeded Ao's expectations. But at this point, they no longer cared how these people came back. They only knew that these people were one with their tribe. The feeling of the totemic flame confirmed this. When Xiao Xian supported the crack to the edge of the cliff, Ao jumped into the sea with his people. They didn't even think about whether there were giant aquatic beasts in the water. The flame that could split the surface of the sea did not stop the Yanjiao people. Those who jumped into the sea could directly enter the crack and stand on the stone path. But at this point, Xiao Xian was almost at his limit. "I can't hold on for much longer. You guys take those who can't move up first." Xiao Xian turned to Zheng Luo. "Take the people in the team and follow them. They're all on the same side." Zheng Luo smiled and nodded. "I know. We're all Yanjiao." He walked towards Ao, who was the first to come in. "Yanjiao Zheng Luo. Yanjiao Ao." The two branch chiefs extended their arms and hugged each other warmly, then thumped each other's shoulders. This was a way of showing friendliness in the tribe. Ao glanced at the team behind Xiao Xian. Suppressing his excitement, he said, "We'll take those who are injured, sick or weak up first. Those who still have energy can climb up using the ropes we threw down. There will be people up there to receive them." Knowing that they were on the same side, the team on the stone path did not reject them or raise their guard. They handed over the injured and quickly climbed up using the ropes made of animal skin. Even those who were exhausted and on the verge of fainting from hunger and thirst tried their best to stay awake. They had reached their destination and there would be people to receive them. They didn't have to worry about anything. They just had to climb up. Xiao Xian had to stay behind. After all, he had to support the crack. Only after the others left could he withdraw the power to part the water and leave. After walking in the sea for so long, not to mention the others, even Xiao Xian felt thirsty and hungry. His mouth was dry and cracked. "Drink some water first." Ao took out his water bottle. There was still some water left in it and he gave it all to Xiao Xian. After drinking some water, Xiao Xian finally felt a little better, but the feeling of hunger was even more obvious. He was planning to have a good meal when he got back. Looking up at the cliff, there were people climbing up with people on their backs. There were also experienced rock climbers with one person on their back and one in their hand. There were also people who climbed up with only one hand and two legs. The 10 colorful ropes were put down. At first, the people at the top let the people below climb up. Later, they found that it was too slow, so they connected 2 of the ropes end to end and formed a circle. Then, they lowered the ropes. There were people at the top of the cliff pulling. Every time one side was pulled up, the other side would lower the same length. It was like a conveyor belt for transporting goods. One side would send the goods up and then unload them at the top. The empty conveyor belt would be lowered from the other side, waiting for the next batch of goods to be delivered. Therefore, the people below could be pulled up as long as they grabbed onto the ropes. Those who couldn't even grab onto the ropes were tied to the top and pulled up. It was indeed a good idea. The animal skin clothes and pants were also wear-resistant. They wouldn't break after being rubbed against the rock. At least, they could support the people pulling up. Seeing that this method was quite efficient and could save the people below, the other ropes were tied up and pulled up in the same way. On the stone path, as the number of people decreased, the cracks also shrank. The smaller the cracks, the more energy Xiao Xian could save. After the other people in the team left with the ropes, Xiao Xian withdrew the power that was supporting the bone ornaments and grabbed onto the ropes. There was no more power to separate the water. The walls on both sides of the cliff collapsed and gathered together. The water splashed all over Xiao Xian. Fortunately, the rope was pulled up quickly. Xiao Xian wasn't drowned by the water. As Xiao Xian was pulled up, he saw a row of people standing along the edge of the cliff. There were also a few familiar beast heads. It felt like a day had passed, as if he hadn't left for the past 2 years. "I'm back." Seeing Xiao Xian, everyone was very excited. Many people wanted to give Xiao Xian a warm hug. Unfortunately, as soon as Xiao Xian came up, the others were pushed aside by Caesar. When Xiao Xian left the fearsome beast forest and came to the desert, he didn't bring Caesar with him. This guy was actually quite resentful. However, seeing Xiao Xian, he was very excited. He lowered his big wolf head and kept rubbing against Xiao Xian. "Long time no see, old friend." Caesar had been with Xiao Xian the longest. Xiao Xian had watched him grow from an ordinary wolf cub to what he was today. It was indeed not easy. Thinking about it, more than 10 years had passed. Xiao Xian greeted everyone one by one and asked about the condition of the injured members. Hearing that their conditions had stabilized and their lives were not in danger for the time being, Xiao Xian was relieved. "Leader, why are you here?" Xiao Xian asked Ao. "The shaman told us to come here. However, after coming to the desert, we met this." Ao pointed to the big beetle that was excitedly kicking its hind legs and told them what had happened. When they saw Caesar running towards the insect tide, they were really scared. They thought that Caesar was going to fight with the big beetle. Even without the big beetle, facing such a large army of insects would not be easy. However, what happened next was beyond their expectations. The insect tide actually opened a path for Caesar. Then Caesar followed the big beetle and ran towards them. The team naturally followed behind. "Good job." Xiao Xian patted the big blue beetle that was now more than 2 meters tall on its back. Just like the little bug that could be crushed with one finger back then, by chance, it became Xiao Xian's first slave. Thinking of what Ji Ju had said, Xiao Xian could clearly feel the thoughts and emotions of this beetle. The more it grew, the closer this connection became. Sapphire's carapace was now like a metal helmet. It was very hard. However, there were crisscrossing marks on this hard shell. Some were marks caused by sharp weapons, while others were marks caused by blunt weapons. This bug had also encountered many things. Finally, they brought the team here. It was impossible for them to leave immediately. They needed to rest here. After walking for so long, everyone had not had a good rest. They were exhausted. Ao asked the soldiers to give the fish that they had caught to these new brothers. Then, they went into the sea again to look for opportunities. These days, they had mastered the skills of fishing in the sea. It was not as difficult as before. Probably because they were close to the sea, the air was not as dry as deep in the desert. The rain stones condensed water faster. After receiving water, the people gradually recovered. The soldiers who were still in good spirits started to chat with their new brothers. Because they were not familiar with the languages used on both sides of the sea were different. Although many people had some contact with the tribal language, they were still not used to it. At first, they stumbled a little. However, they were able to express the general idea with words and gestures. Both sides had a lively conversation. Especially when Tua and the others saw the weapons in the hands of their new brothers. Their eyes were wide open. Metal weapons were not common here. They had seen more of them in the desert. Even the other tribes had stolen them from the slave masters. After the core seed was brought back, the stone was placed there. However, they did not know how to smelt it, so it had been put aside. This. Tua and the others felt that their worldview had been turned upside down. Duo Kong, who had heard about the situation here, was not surprised. He even generously gave a small copper knife to Gigu. The two hunting team leaders had their arms around each other's shoulders as they chatted. Tua, Mao, Mo, and the others were also chatting with Tao Zheng and Wu Zhan. The former was envious of the latter for being able to afford metal weapons. The latter was envious of the former for having such powerful fearsome beasts. Although the fearsome beasts were listless now, this was only temporary. As soon as they left the desert, they would immediately recover their health. Without fire, the tribesmen used rocks. During the day, the rocks in the desert were very hot. When food was placed on the rocks, you could hear a sizzling sound. Although they could not be fully cooked, it was better than eating them raw. Who knew if the fish in the sea would get sick if they ate them raw? Yang Guang and his sister also brought their tamed fearsome beasts this time. Every time they came, they would personally go into the sea to find food for the two fearsome beasts. When Xiao Xian looked over, he saw Xiaomai's Guang throwing a large conch at the forest raccoes. The forest raccoes used its beak as a chisel and easily broke the conch. After looking around, Xiao Xian retracted his gaze and asked Ao about the situation here. After 2 years, there should have been a lot of changes. The forces in the desert have indeed changed a lot. Now, there are no longer the 3 major cities, only Rock Hill City. The other smaller cities are all vassals. However, Rock Hill City is currently cleaning up the remaining forces. They haven't made any moves yet. When we came here, we didn't meet anyone from Rock Hill City. Ao said. After all, the desert was huge. Even if Rock Hill City was the overlord of the desert, they wouldn't be scattered to every corner of the desert. Most places were just yellow sand. Unless they were purposely cleaning up a certain force, they wouldn't send troops there. As for why the tribesmen didn't meet anyone from Rock Hill City, it could be because of luck. It could also be because of the beetle. After all, it was the beetle that led the way. Xiao Xian was already prepared for the outcome in the desert. Especially after learning about some of the secrets of the past, he knew that the people surnamed Shi were planning something big. He just didn't know how they were going to take revenge. What about the tribe? Xiao Xian asked again. The tribe is fine. Everything is going well. The harvest from the fields is also good. The wanderers are also well behaved. As for the other tribes, I didn't hear anything big. However, when there was a scuffle in the desert, I heard that a few tribes sent people to the desert a few times. They must have taken a lot of things. What about the others? The others? Like the weather. How was the past winter? Xiao Xian asked. The weather? Speaking of which, it's strange. In the past, there was always snow in the mountains. This year, there was no snow, only rain. We asked later and it didn't snow anywhere else. It was rare to have a warm winter. We even went hunting in the mountains a few times. Ha! Ao laughed. However, as he laughed, he noticed that Xiao Xian and Zheng Luo's expressions were strange. Chapter 494. What's wrong? Ao asked, puzzled. Xiao Xian told him about the situation on the other side of the sea. That winter was indeed strange. The conditions on both sides of the sea were polar opposites. One side was almost frozen to ice, while the other side was so hot that they didn't even want to wear the thinnest animal skin clothes. After listening to Xiao Xian, Ao fell into deep thought. The situation on the other side of the sea that Xiao Xian described was much worse than their situation on the other side of the river. No one felt at ease when things were out of the ordinary. Although they had thought of many possibilities and were worried, they were not as shocked as they were now. No matter what, it's fine if the weather doesn't change. If it gets hotter this winter, it's better for us to prepare in advance. Hot weather had its inconveniences. Plants had lost their original growth patterns and the habits of the beasts in the forest had been disrupted. If they wanted to have a good harvest, they had to prepare more. However, there was still half a year's time. It was better to solve the problem at hand first. The team rested for 3 days. They could not stay here forever. Food and water had always been a big problem. If they continued, not only would the situation not improve, it would worsen. A few fearsome beasts helped carry some of the sick and injured. Ao also brought some people to carry them. No matter how weak they were much better than these people who had come all the way here. Even if the current situation was not good, everyone was happy. When people were happy, they would have motivation. Xiao Xian asked Sapphire to control the beetles to follow behind and lie in ambush. They did not surround the area. This would scare away the desert beasts that came out at night. They did not want to encounter them before because they were in trouble. Now that they were short of food, they would kill every beast they encountered. Therefore, when they saw a huge scorpion come out, everyone's eyes turned green as if they could shine. The huge scorpion that had rushed out of the sand with a murderous aura felt an even stronger murderous aura. Even its tail froze and it turned to run. Swish swish swish, dozens of people jumped out of the team, not giving the scorpion a chance to escape. Gigu and the others wanted to show off in front of their brother tribe. They shouted, "We'll do it. Back off, let us do it. You guys should rest first, we should be the ones to entertain you." On the other side, Duo Kong and the rest, "No need, really, we can handle it ourselves." He hadn't hunted for a long time, and his hands were itching. One scorpion was not enough to split the spoils. The other ferocious beasts in the team did not even get a chance to show off their skills. They were like bystanders. When they entered the desert, their limelight was stolen by the beetle, and when they left, they did not even have a chance to steal the limelight. Most of the time, the group would wait for the sun to dim down before they started their journey. Then, they would find a place to rest before the sun came out. It was impossible for such a large troop to remain unnoticed. Actually, when the Yinjiao people entered the desert, Rock Hill City scouts had already wanted to keep an eye on them. However, when they encountered the insect wave, they did not follow them closely. They only sent someone to report to their superiors and guard a few key points to prevent the tribesmen from stealing their things. If the young master had not taken the important things in advance, the tribesmen would have stolen even more. During the chaotic times in the desert, many tribesmen took advantage of the chaos to steal metal weapons. This was the impression that the people in the desert had of the tribesmen. Therefore, when they saw a troop of close to 1,000 people enter the desert, they were all on guard. Although there had been tribesmen in the past, there had never been such a large troop. There were even ferocious beasts among them. Now that they had detected the troops' movements and did not see the insect wave, they could monitor them. Unfortunately, Yinjiao also had a white bird that was difficult to deal with. Therefore, it was difficult to monitor them from the air. They could only keep a distance from Yinjiao's troop and follow them. However, why did Yinjiao's troop suddenly increase by so much? This made them raise their vigilance from the beginning to the highest level. When did such a huge team suddenly appear in the desert? Could it be that they had gathered a few scattered factions? No, they had to report the latest information quickly. The Yinjiao people also knew that there were people watching them nearby, but it was difficult to catch them. They did not have the energy to deal with those people now. They just wanted to leave the desert as soon as possible. As long as those people did not provoke them, they did not want to waste energy fighting. "Hey, look over there." A Yinjiao warrior covered his head under the hot sun and looked at a sand dune not far away. On the long sand dune, there were some creatures walking on the sand ridge. When they saw those creatures, most of the people in the troop wanted to rush up with their knives and slaughter those creatures. However, they were stopped by Xiao Xian. If they were stopped by others, they would have other thoughts. After all, it was rare to come across such good food. If they did not slaughter it, how could they live up to their luck? The chief did not even say anything. "What were you shouting for?" However, the one who stopped them was Xiao Xian. Whether it was on this side of the sea or the other side of the sea, Xiao Xian's position was very special. Although it was said that his position in the tribe was second only to the shaman and the chief, his influence was definitely greater than the other two. Especially after the crossing of the sea incident, no one in the Yinjiao team could directly refute Xiao Xian's words. Whoever did would be beaten up by others. Therefore, when Xiao Xian stopped them, the people who rushed over excitedly with their knives turned around and ran back obediently. There must be a reason why Xiao Xian stopped them. Xiao Xian raised his hand to shield his head from the scorching sun. He looked at the long line of camels on the sand ridge with a big smile on his face. He really did not know how this group of camels had survived in the desert until now and safely gathered in such a large group. Mud. It's still alive. Yes, in the group of camels walking on the sand ridge, the leading camel with a white face, 2 white short ears, and long dark brown hair at the front of its curved neck and hump was the camel that Yang Sui gave to Xiao Xian. The high temperature made the scene a little distorted. Xiao Xian shielded his head from the sun and looked at Mud, who was walking in front of the camels with its head slightly raised. It was facing the wind and sand, leading the camels towards them. Ong ong. Mud called twice, the long hair on its head fluttering in the wind, as if it was greeting Xiao Xian. Hearing Xiao Xian call Mud, Tua and Lei also remembered the origin of the camel and explained to the others. When Xiao Xian left Autumn Fall, he could not bring Mud with him, so he let it go. It only had a leather bag with water hanging around its neck. Now, the bag was empty and the bag was open. The bag was tattered and there were obvious bite marks. If it were not for the bag, Xiao Xian would not have recognized it in the first place. Seeing Mud walk to the side of the giant beetle, Xiao Xian could feel that Sapphire seemed to be familiar with this camel. He guessed that Sapphire must have helped Mud and the camels to be able to wander safely in the desert during the war. After all, many people would not think of anything else when they encountered an insect tide. The best thing to do was to run. Who would have the mind to hunt camels? Let's go together. Xiao Xian patted Mud's neck. Although it looked thin, it was very energetic. It was already a great fortune to be alive. Xiao Xian did not know whether this was an acceptance or rejection. He let a few soldiers sit on the camel's back and they were not rejected. Most of these camels should have been raised by people. Later, they left the slave master's city during the war and came out. Otherwise, wild camels would not have been so easy to get in touch with. Bring the sick and injured over and let these camels carry them. Xiao Xian fed some water to the camels and felt that they were much closer to them. With the camels helping to carry the injured, everyone in the team could relax. Sapphire often circled around Xiao Xian. Even in the face of Caesar's baring teeth, it persisted. Xiao Xian knew what it wanted. After the third unlock, the beetle still had 2 locks on its body. No slave did not want to be unlocked. In the past 2 years, there were many wars in the desert and Sapphire was injured several times. If it were not for the insect tide, it would have been difficult to avoid those disasters. Once the situation in the desert stabilized, would there be people who would specifically target it? After all, the insect tide was a big problem for the slave masters in the desert, especially the Shi family who was now in power. Shi Shu knew that Sapphire was on Xiao Xian's side. He could not let such a threat remain in the desert. Whether it was Sapphire or the insect army, they had long gotten used to the desert's climate and environment. They were used to the desert's sandy ground, so they would not feel comfortable in a new environment. The best way to give Sapphire more protection was to make it stronger. Therefore, when they were getting closer to the edge of the desert, Xiao Xian took Sapphire to a sand dune during their break and tried to unlock the 4th lock. After Xiao Xian left the desert, he did not know when he would return. If he could unlock it successfully, it would increase the beetle's chances of survival. Unlocking the 4th lock consumed a lot of energy. A large amount of totemic power and power of inheritance were lost. Fortunately, Xiao Xian had recovered most of his depleted energy from crossing the sea. In addition, when he trained the bone ornaments, he had more precise control of the two powers. Although it was not easy to unlock the fourth lock on Sapphire's body, it was a success in the end. After unlocking the fourth lock, Sapphire sank into the sand. Xiao Xian could feel that this time, it might be asleep for a long time. The fourth lock was obviously more difficult than the third. It was a hurdle. Xiao Xian could only unlock it. As for the future, it would depend on Sapphire. After Sapphire sank into the sand, the other beetles did not appear again. For a long time, the insect tide did not appear in the desert. Of course, that was a story for later. On the fourth day after unlocking Sapphire, the team finally walked out of the desert. The team decided to rest around the Rain Tribe and get some food to eat. When Yang Sui received a report from the Rain Tribesmen that a large team was approaching the Rain Tribe, he was very worried. He was worried that the people in the desert would attack the Rain Tribe. But after looking around, he realized that it was not a slave master. There were a few familiar faces in front of the team. Yang Sui relaxed a little and his expression softened. There was a smile in his eyes. When he saw the group of camels next to the team, Yang Sui recognized Mud at the front. The smile in his eyes widened. But soon, the smile in his eyes turned into surprise, and then shock. Damn, there were only 1,000 people when they left. How come there were so many now? What happened to this world? Chapter 495. Yang Sui was very happy to see Xiao Xian again. Without Xiao Xian, there would be no shaman of the Rain Tribe. Yang Sui would have been burned to death long ago. Although he didn't know what happened to Xiao Xian in the past 2 years, it was probably the luckiest thing for him to walk out of the desert alive. Yang Sui's childhood sweetheart, Mi Su, was even happier than Yang Sui. She didn't have any special feelings for the Yanjiao people. She was just happy to see Mud. When she sent Mud away, she was prepared to never see him again. She didn't expect to see him again 2 years later, and a group of them came back. These camels followed them out of the desert and probably had to stay in the Rain Tribe in the future. They didn't seem to want to leave and followed Mi Su obediently. Now that the sapphire sunk into the sand, they had no protection. Compared to the chaotic and dangerous desert, this place was much safer. Yang Sui didn't understand why the Yanjiao people suddenly quadrupled, but he still asked people to prepare water and food. Thank you. Xiao Xian returned all the rain stones that Yang Sui borrowed. As for the one that Yang Sui gave him, Yang Sui didn't ask for it back. You're welcome. It's good that you came out alive. I heard that the desert was very chaotic these 2 years. Yang Sui handed the rain stone to the person next to him. Seeing that all the rain stones were returned, the people of the Rain Tribe finally felt relieved. Their attitude towards the Yanjiao people also eased a lot. After all, rain stones were very important to living in such a dry place. There were too many people in the Yanjiao team, so the arranged houses couldn't accommodate all of them. They could only let the sick and weak people live in the houses. The rest of the warriors stayed outside and sat on the ground. There are no sandstorms these days. You can rest here without worries, Yang Sui said. Xiao Xian still believed in Yang Sui's ability to predict the weather. If he said there would be no sandstorms these days, then there definitely wouldn't be. Otherwise, he wouldn't be a shaman anymore. When people were hungry, they could eat dry and hard biscuits. The warriors chewed the dry and hard biscuits and drank water sparingly. They felt alive again. Are those people from Yanjiao? Yang Sui asked Xiao Xian as he looked at the group of people sitting on the ground. At first, he thought that the Yanjiao people had brought a group of slaves from the desert, but now it seemed that was not the case. They got along too well, as if they were one. Moreover, the newcomers had the aura of the fire seed, which belonged to the Yanjiao tribe. As a shaman, Yang Sui was very sensitive to this. Yes, they're all from Yanjiao. Xiao Xian sighed. By the way, it's so chaotic in the desert. You're close to the desert. Are you okay? How can he be completely fine? Yang Sui was angry at the mention of this. Because of the war in the desert, people often escaped from the desert and brought a lot of trouble to the Rain tribe. Some people even wanted to rob them. Several people of the Rain tribe who went out to look for rain stones mysteriously disappeared. A few days later, when they sent people out to look for rain stones, they found a few skeletons in the place where they often looked for rain stones. There was not much flesh, and the marks on the skeletons were cut by sharp weapons instead of being bitten by beasts. Now, as long as slaves come out, our tribe treats them as enemies. It's okay if they stay far away, but if they want to come close, the warriors of the Rain tribe will kill them directly. Speaking of this, Yang Sui sighed. I know it's dangerous to be too close to those slave owners. In fact, I think it would be better if our tribe could move a little farther away to a more fertile place. Some things couldn't be solved by praying for rain. Those people in the desert were too dangerous. Who knew what would happen in the future? As the shaman of the Rain tribe, Yang Sui also had a heavy burden on his shoulders. He really wanted to move the tribe to a better place. However, it was very risky to move the tribe. Otherwise, they would have moved long ago instead of waiting until now. No one wanted to take the risk. What if the fire seed was destroyed during the migration? The fighting power of the Rain tribe was not as strong as that of the Yanjiao. Thinking of something, Xiao Xian became serious and winked at Yang Sui. Talk. Yang Sui knew that Xiao Xian had something to say, so he nodded and took Xiao Xian to the shaman's exclusive room. No one was allowed to enter, even the chief was not allowed to enter without permission. Looking at the layout of the room and thinking of the situation before Yang Sui became a shaman, he felt that things were different now. Shaman, you're living a good life. Xiao Xian sat down on a stone bench. Not bad. Yang Sui grinned. By the way, what do you want to talk to me about? Is it important? It's really important. Xiao Xian said, I remember when I came here 2 years ago, you said that there was a problem with the fire seed of your tribe. Xiao Xian knew the secret of the fire seed because of Yang Sui. Yes. The shaman of the Rain tribe could pray for rain, but the key factor to the success of praying for rain was not the shaman, but the fire seed. Because the fire seed was in trouble, no matter how hard it prayed, it could not succeed. Yang Sui once told Xiao Xian that the fire seed seemed to be asleep. When the shaman prayed for rain, he could not wake it up no matter how hard he tried. It only woke up once a year during the big sacrifice. At other times, it would not wake up. Moreover, this situation had become more and more serious for thousands of years. This was why the people of the Rain tribe were so crazy when Yang Sui succeeded in praying for rain 2 years ago. I found the reason. Xiao Xian said, and I know there is a solution. Yang Sui was shocked and looked at Xiao Xian in surprise. What's the solution? If there was a solution, he had to do it even if it was risky. Xiao Xian told Yang Sui some information he got from the other side of the sea. He did not talk about the specific situation on the other side of the sea. He only said that the fire seed could be integrated into everyone's body, and it did not have to be in the fire pit. However, after the fire seed disappeared, the tribe would also face the risk of disbanding. Many tribes disappeared on the other side of the sea. The wanderers formed various new forces, or lived in the cities under the jurisdiction of the slave owners. The cohesion of the tribe would be greatly weakened, which was the biggest risk. After listening to Xiao Xian, Yang Sui was silent for a while. He had to admit that Xiao Xian's words made him very embarrassed. He knew the reason for the weakening of the fire seed and the solution to prevent it from continuing to weaken, but the risk was also unacceptable. The existence of the tribe was to gather the strength of the tribe and unite around the fire seed. But if this cohesion was gone, would the Rain tribe still exist? What will you choose? Yang Sui looked straight into Xiao Xian's eyes. He wanted to confirm whether Xiao Xian's answer was true. Our choice. In fact, it's very clear. With your ability, you should be able to tell the difference between the people outside and the Yanjiao tribesmen, right? Yang Sui's pupils shrank, and he unconsciously clenched his fists. That is, they are the fire seed. Xiao Xian got up and was about to leave. He had said what he wanted to say. As for the choice, it was up to Yang Sui. As long as the people are here, the fire seed is here, as long as the people are here, the tribe is here. Think about it carefully. If you decide, you can go to the Yanjiao tribe to find me. You have been to the ferocious Beast Mountain Forest. Xiao Xian knew that Yang Sui couldn't make up his mind in such a short time. This was a big decision that would determine the future of the whole tribe. Even if Yang Sui was the shaman of the Rain tribe, he couldn't make this decision alone. After Xiao Xian left, Yang Sui shut himself in the room and thought for a long time. He told the guards outside to keep away all disturbances. Once he was lost in thought, he would forget everything outside. When Yang Sui came out of the room, the Yanjiao tribesmen had already left. After standing by the fire pit for a while, Yang Sui invited several senior elders and the current chief to have a talk in the house. The other members of the Rain tribe didn't know what these senior elders talked about. They only knew that when they came out, they were all in a trance and kept their mouths shut. No matter how others asked, they didn't say a word. On the other side, the Yanjiao tribesmen who had left the Rain tribe were also heading back to the ferocious Beast Mountain Forest. For the newcomers, many things here were very new. This was because the tribes here maintained even more ancient customs. The weapons they used were all stone tools, horns, bones, and so on. The metal knives in their hands had long been tied up in animal skin bags or clothes, and all the bronze weapons were covered. Therefore, when the Rain tribe rested, the people of the Rain tribe didn't see their bronze weapons. When they walked along the road, they also made a lot of rattan and woven baskets and tied them up again to cover their weapons. After all, there were too few bronze weapons here. It would be too eye-catching to carry them. They just came back and hadn't adjusted their condition, so they didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble. About the fire seed, did you tell the Rain tribe shaman? Ao asked Xiao Xian. Yes, he can decide what to do, Xiao Xian said. Ao nodded. He felt that Yang Sui was a trustworthy person. He had helped their tribe too. Although it was for Xiao Xian's sake, after interacting with him, Ao felt that Yang Sui was more trustworthy than the other big tribes. Speaking of the fire seed, Ao himself found it hard to believe. When Zheng Luo and the others came ashore, Ao was still looking forward to finding the fire seed. At first, he thought the fire seed was the source of the fire seed. Later, he found out it was the power of the ancestral bone ornaments. But what about the fire seed? After Xiao Xian's explanation, Ao finally understood the secret. As a traditional chief of a tribe, Ao couldn't accept living without the fire seed. But looking at these new brothers, their strength was probably a little higher than the people in the tribe. This was the power of the fire seed. Moreover, the reason why the ancestors left back then was because of this. Now that they had returned, it proved that those who left back then were right. They had completed their mission and found a solution to prevent the fire seed from continuing to weaken. Listening to the matters on the other side of the sea, it was obvious that the situation on the other side was much better than on this side. A new era was coming. At this turning point, it was up to everyone to make a choice. While Ao was struggling, Xiao Xian was thinking. This time, once the two teams merged, there would be 2 chiefs, 2 shamans, and 3 team leaders. What should they do? Chapter 496. The Flaming Horn Tribe's team was too big and too eye-catching. Along the way, almost everyone who saw this team looked at them with a strange expression. Ao had already chosen a different route from the one they took. But with such a large number, it was enough to beat most tribes. This was the same size as when they first crossed the river to return to their homeland. They could not be ignored. In other people's eyes, the Yinjiao tribe was migrating again. This could not be hidden even if they wanted to. Other tribes would know when they talked about it. Did you know? The Yinjiao tribe is migrating again. One of the traders said. Migrating? I've seen it. It's been a while. I remember there weren't many people. I thought they were going to war with someone. Another trader was very confused. Not many. There were a lot of people. Old people, children, women, everyone. I saw it with my own eyes. Their team passed right in front of our tribe. Old people and children. I don't remember that. Yes. Why not? I counted, there were at least 5,000 people. That's a lot more than our tribe. What? 5,000? You must have counted wrong. I'm good at counting. There's no way I'm wrong. I don't believe it. Do you dare swear on your tribe's totem? Fine, I'll swear. Similar conversations appeared in many places. However, Yinjiao's team continued on their planned route. They did not know that they had started a heated discussion. Even if they did, they would not care. They were busy, where would they find the time to talk nonsense with unimportant people? As they got closer to Fearsome Beast Forest, Zheng Luo and the rest could feel a familiar aura, as if it was one with them. Although they were in an unfamiliar environment, that direction gave them a warm and safe sense of familiarity. The totem power in their bodies surged as if they were eager to get there. The bright totem patterns on their bodies flashed, just like their mood at the moment. Although they had seen Zheng Luo's totemic patterns a few times in the desert, Ao and the rest couldn't help but sigh. Was this the result of merging with the fire seed? For those who had not merged with the fire seed, their totem tattoos were dark in color when they activated their totem power. Xiao Xian was an exception. But now, when these newcomers had bright totem tattoos flashing on their bodies, Ao and the others were envious. They were not envious of the bright totem tattoos, but the aura that these newcomers exuded was indeed stronger than theirs. Although the difference was not huge, it was enough to change many people's minds. Previously, when Ao heard that he had to fuse with the fire seed, he was unwilling. But gradually, he began to waver. After the fusion, the potential of the warriors would be greater, and the flame seed would not continue to weaken. Who wouldn't want to have greater power? At the same time, outside the Fearsome Beast Forest, a large number of people had gathered in the Wuxia tribe. When Ao left with his people and a few fearsome beasts, the Wuxia tribe received the news. They also considered whether to take this opportunity to attack the Yinjiao tribe. Those who left were half of the Yinjiao's main force. As for the remaining half in the forest, the Wuxia tribe felt that they could take care of them. After the war in the desert, some people escaped. Among them were the slave masters who had worked with the Wuxia tribe in the past. The reason why the Wuxia tribe could develop to such a scale in a few hundred years was because of the slave masters in the desert. Although the situation in the desert had not completely stabilized, the smart people knew that soon, only Rock Hill City would exist in the desert. There would not be any other powers that could threaten Rock Hill City. They could not return to the desert. Hence, those who escaped the desert turned their attention to the Wuxia tribe. They were very grateful that their ancestors had supported the Wuxia tribe. This gave them a way out. Since they could no longer stay in the desert, and the other tribes did not trust the slave masters. Instead, they wanted to steal from the slave masters. The slave masters who escaped had only one choice. Now, the Wuxia tribe had the support of some of the slave masters who escaped. In addition to the Wuxia warriors, there were many slaves who could be used as cannon fodder on the front lines. However, the decision to attack the Flaming Horn tribe was met with opposition from some people, especially the slave masters. It wasn't easy for them to escape, so they didn't want to experience any more chaos. Attacking the Flaming Horn tribe would definitely cause them a lot of losses. Moreover, Yanjiao was a tribe living in the forest. They were poor and had poor land. Even if they succeeded, what could they do? Could they even snatch the territory inside? They did not want to live in a forest full of fearsome beasts. Even if they wanted to fight, they had to wait until they had more slaves. Otherwise, if the slaves became cannon fodder, who would protect the slave masters? In the past, the Wuxia chief was the only one who made decisions in the tribe. No one could object to his decisions. But now, with the addition of these slave owners, the influence of the Wuxia chief was diluted. The chief was no longer the absolute authority. Any decision had to be approved by the slave owners. Otherwise, they would not support or provide manpower or other things. The Wuxia chief had thought about rebelling, but the slave masters were too cunning. He did not dare to take the risk. He had been suppressing his anger. Now, the Wuxia chief wanted to attack Yanjiao. These people jumped out to oppose him. They said that something must have happened since the Yanjiao chief took so many people out. Perhaps he was trying to lure them into a trap. Then they would surround them from the front and back. This was a trap for the Wuxia tribe. Trap my ass. The Wuxia chief wanted to strangle them, but he had to consider the slave master's opinions. He could only hold his anger. But as the days went by, they noticed that the fire seed in the fire pit was getting weaker, as if it was being suppressed by a stronger force. The new Wuxia shaman persuaded the slave masters. Only Yanjiao could directly suppress the fire seed of the Wuxia tribe. Finally, they came to a consensus. The slave masters provided some slaves. The Wuxia chief gathered the warriors of the tribe and brought out the Wuxia beasts. After a few days of preparation, they were finally ready to go. Looking at the green forest in the distance, the Wuxia chief's eyes flashed with madness. He still remembered that the Yanjiao people had stood at the edge of the forest and said, "Go in. Those who enter the forest will die." "I'll go in." "So what? Not only will I go in, but I'll also step into Yanjiao's territory and take all your valuables and women." The sun was setting. This time, the Wuxia people planned to attack at night. During the day, the Yanjiao people were familiar with the forest and had the advantage. But at night, it was different. They had heard that the Yanjiao people rarely went out at night. On the other hand, the Wuxia beasts they brought out all had good night vision. Besides, the Wuxia tribe had done a lot of night robberies. They were familiar with the job. They just needed to be careful in the forest. Yanjiao didn't have those beasts. Even if there were some left in the forest, they wouldn't be able to stop all 40 Wuxia beasts at once. Very good plan. Listen to my orders. The Wuxia chief raised his knife and was about to give the order when he heard a long, sharp cry of a bird in the sky. A white bird flew across the sky like a flash of white lightning. "That's the one from Yanjiao. Didn't it leave with them? Could it be?" Someone in the team said. After the bird's cry, there was a wolf's howl and other beasts' roars. It didn't come from the forest. That's, Yanjiao's team is back. The Wuxia chief scolded, "What are you shouting for? Beat them even if they're back." It wasn't easy to get the slave masters here. How could they give up so easily? It was just a few thousand people coming back. They would beat them all the same. However, they soon realized that there were more than what they had expected. 2,000 people. 3,000. It seemed more than that. Even far away, the Wuxia people could feel the fierce momentum rushing over. It was too fierce, too strong. They didn't want to face it at all. "No, we won't go." One of the senior slaves decided immediately. Although they came with the Wuxia chief, their master had ordered them to go back immediately if they felt something was wrong. They didn't want to die with the Wuxia people. It wasn't easy to get out of the desert and survive. They didn't want to act rashly before they had absolute confidence. The war in the desert had scared them out of their wits. After that senior slave said that, the other senior slaves all expressed their opinions. Although the current situation was indeed unexpected, Wanshi's leader almost suffered an internal injury from holding back his anger. The Wanshi chief opened his mouth a few times. He wanted to give the order to attack, but after thinking for a while, he swallowed it back. He forcefully withdrew his chi. Because he did it too quickly, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression became ferocious. His eyes were full of struggle, and the veins on his arm, which was holding the stone saber, bulged. Fight. Yanjiao's main force was back. Not only were they back, but they also brought back reinforcements. If they attacked, they wouldn't gain anything. Plus, their people had betrayed them. How could they fight? Not fight. Where would their dignity go? Where would their prestige go? But in the face of reality, the Wanshi chief had to stop his plan after weighing the pros and cons. Go back. The Wanshi chief tasted the blood in his mouth. He suppressed his anger and said. However, because the Wanshi leader's voice was not loud and the other Wanshi people's attention was on the new team, they did not hear the leader's words clearly. Even if they did, they didn't react immediately. What? Chief, what did you just say? A person standing next to the Wanshi chief asked. I said go back. The Wanshi chief almost roared. He was so angry that he didn't know how to vent it. He spat out another mouthful of blood after shouting. Seeing this, the others didn't dare to ask any more questions. Although they didn't want to miss the best opportunity, they didn't want to continue. They still cherished their lives. Thus, when the Wanshi people were sharpening their swords and planning to attack Yanjiao while Yanjiao was weak, the plan fell apart. In the Yanjiao tribe in Fearsome Beast Forest, Ta had already received information about the Wanshi tribe's movements. Although the tribe had the fire seed as a line of defense, they couldn't completely rely on it. The fire seed's range was limited. They had to fight on their own. In fact, when the shamaness sent out so many people, he had different opinions. But since the shamaness made the decision, he didn't object. He ordered his men to prepare for the battle. Ta planned to ask the shamaness if they should transfer some of the tribe's people. After all, half of their main forces were gone. It would be difficult for them to fight. No one could predict what would happen. But after he asked, the shamaness still stood by the fire pit in silence. After a while, she said, no need. But, Ta wanted to say something, but the shamaness said, everyone, don't prepare. This battle will happen sooner or later. But it won't happen today. Ta looked at the shamaness in confusion. He didn't understand what she meant. The shamaness didn't explain further. She just stared at the flames in the fire pit. The flames in the fire pit surged. Since the fire had suddenly started, it had not stopped. Moreover, the flames were getting higher and higher, and the fire was getting stronger and stronger. The shamaness stood by the fire pit and looked at the flames. Her weathered eyes were filled with tears, shining in the light of the fire. Although she didn't go out with Ao and the others, she knew what might happen. It's been 1,000 years. The shamaness sighed. It had been 1,000 years. The Yanjiao tribe, which used to be known by everyone in its heyday, had fallen to a forgotten corner. Natural disasters, division, the lack of a fire seed, people's hearts wavered, and so on. So much so that they could only curl up in a small corner far away from the mainland, forcibly isolated. Although they didn't know how their ancestors felt when they carved those murals in the cave, from the words left behind by their ancestor, Zan, and from the animal skin scrolls passed down, they knew that generation after generation of flaming horns held on to hope. They hoped that one day, the glory of the past would return. One day, they would return to their homeland. The glory would still be there. The fire of the flaming horns would never be extinguished. The glory of Yanjiao will return. Tears finally rolled down from the shamaness's eyes, leaving 2 lines of water stains on her wrinkled old face. Ha! Ha 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 ha! With tears in her eyes, the shamaness stared at the flames in the fire pit and laughed hoarsely. She was hysterical and excited to the extreme. Ta, who was standing next to her, was dumbfounded. The usually calm and steady shamaness had gone crazy. The flames in the fire pit roared in the wind, and the 2-horned totem slowly appeared. The totem patterns on Ta's body also appeared spontaneously. Ta sensed something and looked in a direction in the forest. Just now, he had heard the chirping of birds and the roaring of beasts. They were sounds that he was familiar with. However, at this moment, he was thinking about something that had nothing to do with the roaring of beasts. He fixed his gaze in that direction, as if he was waiting for something. Not only Ta, but all the Yinjiao people had a strange feeling. No matter what they were doing, they all stopped what they were doing and looked in the same direction. The sky gradually darkened, and the light of the sun gradually dimmed. The light of the fire gradually became more prominent, and even the silver light of the 2 moons couldn't dim it. In the dense forest that covered the sky and the sun, in the darkness, as the sound of footsteps approached, some dense spots of light that resembled the color of fire seeds appeared. Chapter 497. Ta couldn't help but move towards that direction. People from other parts of the tribe also came over and stood behind Ta, looking in the direction of the forest. In the dark forest, there were many scattered lights moving. At first, they thought someone was lighting a torch, but soon they realized that it wasn't the fire from the torch, but the light from people. People had fire on them. There were many people in the forest, and they could tell from the sound of the footsteps. If Ta and the others weren't familiar with the footsteps of the giant beasts, and the breath of Ao and the others, and the strong sense of familiarity and strangeness, they would have taken up their weapons. Ta was stunned when he saw the face of the person in front. Xian. At this time, Xiao Xian and the others had already entered the tribe. The soldiers who were patrolling the area also came over. At first, they were worried that the Wansha people would attack, but soon they realized that wasn't the case. They couldn't bring themselves to hate them at all, and when they knew who they were, they followed obediently. The shamaness's hand holding her walking stick was trembling. She felt as if her feet weighed 1,000 pounds, and every step was heavy. Her anticipation reached its peak, and she felt a little scared, like she was in a trance. On this seemingly ordinary day, the 2 tribes that had been separated for 1,000 years met again in the fearsome beast forest. After 2 years, Xiao Xian saw the people here again. "I'm back." Xiao Xian walked over and gave the shamaness a hug. "Good, good." The shamaness's eyes glistened with tears. She looked at Xiao Xian carefully. After 2 years, Xiao Xian still looked the same, but he gave off a feeling that he had changed a lot, especially the obvious totemic patterns on Xiao Xian's body. She glanced at Xiao Xian, then looked at the people behind Xiao Xian. Ao and the other shamans were directly ignored. Their figures were too familiar. Moreover, when Ao and the others stood together with the newcomers, they were really inconspicuous. Their totem patterns were all glowing. As the shamaness, she could clearly feel the strong fire seed energy on these people, and it resonated with the fire pit in the tribe. However, the fire seed was nowhere to be seen. Realizing something, a thought flashed through the shaman's mind. However, this was not the time for him to think about it. The people in front of him were the people, all Yinjiao people, the people their ancestors had been looking forward to for thousands of years. Now, they had finally arrived. Who is that old lady riding on Caesar's back and holding a walking stick? Ao strode over and briefly introduced these people to the shaman. Then he turned to Ta and said, "Go and tell everyone to prepare food and treat the new brothers well. Oh right, by the way, tell everyone to clear out some rooms tonight and prepare more appliances." "Oh, okay." Tower nodded repeatedly. Although he wasn't clear about the specific situation, his intuition told him something. He looked at the group of newcomers again, then turned around and left to make arrangements. There are many injured people in the team. We need to prepare more medicine, Xiao Xian said to the shaman. Yes, I understand. It was a difficult journey from the other side of the sea to here. They had crossed the desert and traveled a long distance to fearsome beast forest. Zheng Luo's team was indeed very tired, but because of their excitement, they were very clear-headed. Especially when they saw the soaring flames in the fire pit, everyone knelt down devoutly. It was a fire seed, a real fire seed. It wasn't a part of their bodies, but a fire seed that existed in the fire pit. It was a primitive fire seed that could be seen with the naked eye. Seeing the pyro seed was like seeing another home. All the anxiety and worries from before were swept away. Ao introduced the new team to the people of the tribe. The injured could finally get better treatment and recuperation, and the hungry warriors could finally let down their guard and eat to their heart's content. The people of the old Haunt tribe were very enthusiastic. Although it was their first time meeting each other and they were a little restrained and shy at first, they soon started chatting and laughing after gnawing on a few beast legs. On the way, Zheng Luo's team had a lot of communication with Ao and the others, so they were much more proficient in using the old language. They didn't need to make gestures when they stuttered a few words. Now they could brag smoothly. The women gathered together to talk about their own topics. The men gathered around the fire to brag. The children and the elderly were placed on the other side to rest. After all, there were too many people. Even if the tribe made room temporarily, it was impossible for everyone to live in a house. It was too late to build a house and no one had the energy to do so. But Zheng Luo's team didn't care. It was a warm place, not as cold as winter, and not as hot as the desert. They could sleep on the grass. Besides, they were all on the same side. With the protection of the fire seed, they could sleep soundly on the ground. After eating and drinking, they were easy to be satisfied. As for the others, they would deal with them after they slept. Don't be afraid. If you don't have a place to sleep, we'll sleep with you on the grass. Mai patted a man of the same age as him and said. Near the border, where the tribesmen and wanderers lived, Yan Ji and Jiao Wu each carried a few roasted beast legs. There were several large animal skin bags hanging from their waists, which contained some fruits and grains harvested last year. After knowing the identity of the newcomers, Yan Ji and Jiao Wu were very happy. The arrival of these people would definitely make the Yanjiao tribe stronger. After all, they were all Yanjiao tribesmen. They were much closer than the wanderers from other tribes or the partners of other tribes. They were willing to trust the people brought by Xiao Xian. When the chief asked everyone to take out food, the two brothers carried out most of the stock. If there was no food, they could hunt again. But they couldn't let the newcomers starve. They heard that it was very difficult for them to come here. Many of them were so hungry that they were almost skinny. The two brothers were laughing and talking when they were suddenly stopped by someone. Hey, Yan Ji, Jiao Wu, wait. They looked over and saw that it was Hier, a wanderer they knew when they were in the Longboat tribe. Since they came to the old haunt, Yan Ji and Jiao Wu had awakened their totemic power. Their lives were much better, and the wanderers who had helped them also benefited a lot. Hier and the others were forced to come here. It was rare for them to see a little hope, so they followed the two brothers here. They didn't expect that although they lived in the ferocious beasts mountain forest, they could live a good life under the protection of the Yanjiao warriors. In addition, the Yanjiao tribe often hired wanderers to help them and paid them. For people without totemic power like Hier and the others, they were very satisfied. Hier also married a wanderer girl. At the beginning of this year, they had their own child. But yesterday, someone in the wanderer's residence said that the Wancher tribe was going to fight with the Yanjiao tribe. But half of the Yanjiao tribe's fighting force was out of the forest. The fighting force here was not enough. Maybe the Yanjiao tribe would be in danger. They had lived here for a long time, so they had heard a lot about the Wuxia tribe. They knew the style of the tribe. Therefore, the wanderers' residence was in turmoil. They had lived a good life for 2 years. Were they going to change places again? He and the others also wanted to ask Yan Ji and other Flaming Horn warriors they were familiar with, but they couldn't find anyone. The Flaming Horn tribe was tense, and the warriors who were patrolling the outermost area also kept their mouths shut, not saying a word. Some wanderers left secretly, but the patrolling warriors didn't stop them. Others saw this and left one after another. But he didn't leave. When someone asked him to leave with them, he refused. He didn't want to leave because he didn't know the specific situation. After waiting for a day, he finally met Yan Ji and his brother. "Where are you going?" He wanted to ask if the Yanjia was going to fight with the Wuxia tribe. But now the two brothers didn't look like they were preparing for war. Instead, they seemed to have encountered something good. So he changed his question. "There are some newcomers. We're going over there." Jiao Wu laughed loudly. "Newcomers? Which tribe are they from?" He asked. "Of course they are from the Yanjiao." He thought they were Yanjiao wanderers who were scattered in other places, so he asked casually, "How many have come? Why are you so happy?" Jiao Wu showed 4 fingers to him. 40. He asked tentatively. Jiao Wu looked at him with disdain. 400. He was a little surprised. 400 was a lot. Jiao Wu continued to look at him with disdain. 4. He stuttered. He didn't want to say that number. He thought it was impossible. 4,000. I can't talk to you anymore. They are waiting for us. Wait, are there really 4,000 wanderers? He asked. They are not wanderers. They are just like the people in the tribe. I heard they are quite powerful. Speaking of this, Jiao Wu was a little unconvinced. He thought that when those people recovered, he would fight with them. Watching Jiao Wu and his brother leave, he stood there in a daze. Then he patted his head and ran home. Although he didn't understand what Jiao Wu meant, he felt that they were very powerful. Looking at their state today, they didn't seem to be worried about fighting at all. Go. I won't go even if you kill me. If I don't hug such a thick thigh, where can I find a better one? As a wanderer, it was rare to encounter such an opportunity. He thought it was good to let those who were wavering leave. He wouldn't go anyway. The flame in the fire pit of the old haunt had been active for a whole night. Warriors were talking and laughing around the bonfire in every corner of the old haunt. Xiao Xian finally came back. Old Ku cooked a big pot of meat soup for him. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Xiao Xian took a shower and had a good night's sleep. He was more tired than the others. He used too much power to support the bone ornaments. Later, he recovered a little and unlocked the sapphire. He led the team all the way here. He was really tired. Xiao Xian slept for 2 days. He didn't wake up halfway, and no one came to wake him up. When Xiao Xian woke up on the 3rd day, there were many new houses in the tribe. Some were built with bricks, some with wood. The clay bricks couldn't be burned so quickly. After all, there were many newcomers, so some people built with wood first. Chapter 498. After Xiao Xian woke up, Old Ku told him that the shamaness had sent someone to look for him. Seeing that Xiao Xian was sleeping soundly, they didn't disturb him and told Xiao Xian to wait until he woke up. Putting down the bowl, Xiao Xian wanted to help wash the pot, but was chased out by Old Ku. The shamaness and the chiefs from both sides are waiting for you. Don't waste time here. Hurry up. Xiao Xian smiled and patted the head of Caesar, who was gnawing on a bone at the door. Xiao Xian then walked towards the shamaness. On the way, he saw warriors from both sides standing side by side. He didn't know what they were talking about. Not far away, there was a brick house being built. There were people from both sides helping. In fact, Xiao Xian knew why the shamaness was in such a hurry to find him. The most important thing now was not the cooperation between the two teams, nor the use of the core seed. It was the issue of the fire seed. In the past, the tribe split because of the fire seed. Both sides had different opinions, which led to the split. It couldn't be said that anyone was wrong. Both sides had their own reasons, and their starting point was for the sake of the Yanjiao tribe. However, after 1,000 years of separation, both sides were afraid. If there was another disagreement now, even if both sides were here, they could still split. Although both sides didn't reject each other, to truly merge into one would take time. They needed to make decisions. If there was a dispute over the fire seed, it would be much more difficult to merge. As the key person to unite both sides and the most special person in the entire Yanjiao tribe, Xiao Xian had to be consulted on such an important matter. There were people guarding outside the shamaness house. When they saw Xiao Xian coming, they quickly made way. When Xiao Xian entered, the atmosphere in the house was a little strange. No matter what, you didn't care about the safety of the old haunt and sent out half of your forces. This is extremely unwise. How would I know you would do this? I thought Xian would bring the fire seed over. What if we can't protect it with enough people? The desert is too dangerous. It's such a long road from there to the fearsome beast mountain forest. Not to mention the slave masters, even the people of other tribes. What if they have any ideas and want to kill us? What a joke. Let's not talk about whether we have the fire seed or not. Even if we brought it here, our warriors would be able to protect it. You guys laid down as soon as you came ashore. The two witches were arguing with each other. The leaders of the two groups of witches were sitting on both sides of the room. Some of them were looking at the ceiling, some of them were staring at the floor. Some of them were even playing with their fingers out of boredom. None of them interrupted, trying their best to minimize their presence. Guizhe, who was sitting next to the shaman, blushed. He couldn't persuade the shaman no matter how hard he tried. When they saw Xiao Xian enter, everyone in the room, whether they were looking at the ceiling or the floor, looked at him as if they had seen their savior. Xian, you're here. Xiao Xian, you're awake. Because of Xiao Xian's appearance, the two witches stopped talking. Although they still didn't look too good, they were much calmer than before. At the same time, they pointed their chins at the innermost seat, indicating for Xiao Xian to sit there. Xiao Xian noticed that there was a seat at the very top in the middle. There used to be two seats there, one for the leader and the other for the witches. But now, the seats were changed. The leaders of the two groups sat on both sides, leaving only one seat in the middle in the front. Seeing that everyone was looking at him without any dissatisfaction, Xiao Xian didn't argue. He walked over and sat down. When they came back that day, the shaman gave the remaining 2 bone ornaments to Xiao Xian. Because he had led the group across the sea, he didn't know if the bone ornaments had used up too much power, but the ball on the bone ornaments seemed to have dimmed a lot. It wasn't until the shaman gave the remaining 2 to Xiao Xian that the 6 bone ornaments were strung together that the dimness faded a little. Now, Xiao Xian was wearing 6 bone ornaments and was the only elder on both sides. He was also an elder with a very special status. When the seat was placed, no one objected. They felt that this was how it should be. However, as the leaders and team leaders who had watched Xiao Xian grow up, they had mixed feelings. The little kid who came out of a cave at the foot of the mountain had grown to this level. What were you guys talking about just now? Xiao Xian asked. He obviously wasn't asking about what the 2 witches were arguing about. He was asking about something else. Ao quickly took over the topic, afraid that the 2 witches would quarrel again. He didn't know what was going on, but the 2 witches started to quarrel. In the past 2 days, they had quarreled several times. We were discussing how to deal with the people who left a few days ago, Ao said. Because they knew that the Wuxia tribe was going to attack the Yanjiao tribe, some people panicked and fled because of the rumors. Among them were wanderers and Yanjiao warriors. None of the warriors who originally followed the tribe ran away. Those who fled were wanderers who came back to the tribe. They got power from the tribe, but they fled at the last minute. The Yanjiao didn't care about those who only wanted to share wealth but didn't want to share hardships with others. So after compiling a list, they unanimously decided to blacklist these people and expel them from the tribe. They would never accept them again. When the tribe moved to the ferocious beasts mountain forest, some people fled, but later some came back and begged the tribe to give them a chance. The tribe gave them a chance because they were all Yanjiao blood. But now, those people betrayed the tribe again. They shouldn't blame the tribe for being merciless. If they really went to war with the Wuxia tribe in the future and these people fled before the war, it would affect the tribe's morale. The sooner they were kicked out, the better. There's also, the Pyro's decision. Ao did not continue after saying this. For the more conservative people here, without the fire seed, many people would feel uneasy. They couldn't imagine life without the fire seed. But these people had followed their ancestors down this path. Both sides grew up in different environments. Ao couldn't decide which to choose. He was conflicted. Not just Ao, the other team leaders were conflicted too. Some were worried about the future without the fire seed. Some were afraid that without the fire seed's restraint and cohesion, everyone would be separated. Everyone knew about the situation on the other side of the sea. Zheng Luo and the others didn't hide anything. Everyone in the room fell silent at the mention of this. The old shaman looked at the old woman who was about to speak. He spoke first. Xian, tell us what you think. Hearing him mention Xiao Xian, the old woman on the other side didn't say anything. She looked at Xiao Xian and waited for Xiao Xian's reply. To be able to borrow the power of the ancestors, he must be someone the ancestors trusted. Hence, Xiao Xian's attitude was very important. The fire seed's problem had to be solved. It was useless to put it aside. If it wasn't solved, the fire seed wouldn't be able to merge completely. The fire seed could merge with everyone's body, but it could also be removed. The method was written in the ancestors' notes. After removing it, the fire seed would merge completely. Should the complete fire seed merge with everyone's body again, or should it keep the original fire seed? Xiao Xian thought for a while. He didn't say his decision immediately. Instead, he said, the Rain Tribe. I believe most of you know about them. Those who had been to the Rain Tribe nodded. Those who hadn't heard about it also nodded. Xiao Xian continued. The Rain Tribe lives in the dry land near the desert. Without enough water, their survival will be very difficult. The ability of the shaman of the Rain Tribe to pray for rain was a major support for the prosperity of the Rain Tribe. The existence of the Rain Tribe may be much longer than that of some of the famous big tribes. Many people had heard about the ability of the shaman of the Rain Tribe to pray for rain, but not everyone knew about the long history of the Rain Tribe. The reason why the shaman of the Rain Tribe could pray for rain was that he borrowed the power of the fire seed of his tribe. But later, he gradually lost the ability. I don't know when it started, but it became difficult to pray for rain. The number of failures increased until it was completely impossible. In the past hundreds or even thousands of years, the praying for rain of the Rain Tribe became a legend. Until 2 years ago, the new shaman of the Rain Tribe finally prayed for rain, but now it's still very difficult. Realizing what Xiao Xian was talking about, Ao and others were also shocked. The fire seed was born between heaven and earth. The fire seed would be extinguished like a torch. The way to keep the fire seed burning forever was to use the blood as the fuel. The continuous blood was the firewood for the fire seed. If one day the fire seed weakened and dissipated, the Rain Tribe would lose the ability to pray for rain. Then what would the Yinjiao lose? Power. If the Yinjiao people gradually lost their advantage of power, how could they survive in the tribes full of strong people? How could they hunt in the mountains full of ferocious beasts? The Rain tribe was a lesson for them. Even if they couldn't understand it now, in the future, thousands of years later, would the descendants of Yinjiao blame them? Would these people become the sinners of the Flaming Horn tribe? Xiao Xian looked at the people present and continued, I know what you are worried about. There is a sentence in the ancestral record, which was left by the ancestor, Qi. Xiao Xian introduced the ancestor, Qi, to those who didn't know. When Yinjiao suffered a disaster, there were 3 generations of shamans. The old shaman abdicated and the new one took over. The old shaman took the history of Yinjiao and went deep into the mountains. He stayed in the cave, waiting for the day when the Yinjiao people came back and took the precious history out. The history had already been brought back by Xiao Xian. People in this old place knew about it. During the catastrophe, the newly appointed shaman and his successor, Qi, had left with the leader at that time to avoid the catastrophe. However, there were differences in opinion. The chief and Qi left with half of the people to find a new way out. The shaman took the rest of the people and left until the earth split open and a giant river separated them from the rest of the world. Zheng Luo's people were able to merge with the fire seed thanks to Qi. Qi was the pioneer. Speaking of Qi's words, Xiao Xian looked at the 2 shamans. These were all written in the ancestral notes, not everyone could see them. There were many secrets in the notes and without permission, they could not be easily revealed. Seeing the 2 shamans nod, Xiao Xian continued. In the record, the ancestor, Qi, once said, the fire seed hasn't disappeared. It still exists in the blood of the Yinjiao people. It will continue to exist with the blood of the Yinjiao people. After a pause, Xiao Xian continued, in addition, there was another sentence, as long as the people are there, the fire seed is there. As long as the people are there, the tribe is there. If the people's hearts were the same and there were no other thoughts, it didn't matter whether there was a fire seed or not. However, if the people's hearts weren't there, if they didn't side with the Yinjiao people, even if there was a fire seed, how much restraint could it have? The fire seed could restrain people, but it couldn't restrain people's hearts. For example, the traitor Dao Yu, or the Yinjiao wanderers who gave up living here, or the Yinjiao warriors who got power but ran away when they heard a strong enemy was coming. Zheng Luo's branch had merged with the fire seed 1,000 years ago. However, without the cohesion of the original fire seed, they were still united. The Yinjiao tribe still fought for a piece of the world there. Moreover, they didn't have to worry about the fire seed being targeted. Even if someone left the tribe, as long as their heart was with the tribe, even if they went far, long, and tired, they could still come back. This was a revolution. No matter which path they chose, they had to give up something. Outside the fearsome beast forest, inside the Wanchur tribe. The young Wanchur shaman stood by the fire pit, looking at the flickering fire seed. His eyes were gloomy and anxious. "It's afraid," said the shaman. "What?" The Wanchur chief, who was standing not far away, was upset and didn't hear clearly. "The fire seed is afraid," said the shaman again. "Something is going to happen." Chapter 499. After the meeting that day, the leaders of both teams thought about it for a few days. They either locked themselves in their homes to think or gathered together to discuss. There had never been a problem that could make them so conflicted. In the past, the leaders of the hunting teams only needed to listen to the chief and shaman. They didn't need to think too much. This time, they were given a chance to express their opinions, but it was such a difficult decision. Xiao Xian's words that day had a huge impact on them. No matter which path they chose, they had to give up a lot of things. All they could do was to weigh the pros and cons and choose the path that was most beneficial to the tribe. Therefore, after 5 days of conflict, they finally decided to choose the path of merging with the fire seed. When the final decision was made, no matter which side it was, they all breathed a sigh of relief. For the people of the old haunt, although it was hard to accept, they felt much more relaxed after the decision was made. The leaders of the hunting teams often asked Duo Kong and the others for advice. They wanted to know what it felt like to merge with the fire seed and how it was different from them who didn't merge with the fire seed. How do you feel? Being surrounded by so many people, Duo Kong smacked his lips. I don't feel anything special. I just feel like there's a fire burning in my body when I'm hunting. Of course, this wasn't the feeling of being burned by the fire seed, but the totemic power provided by the fire seed was more direct and abundant. But that was it. Duo Kong couldn't say anything more. He himself didn't know the difference between merging with the fire seed and not merging with the fire seed. The totemic patterns on your bodies are so bright. One of the leaders of the hunting teams said enviously. It's not good to be too bright. Every time we go out to hunt, we have to cover it with colored mud. I'm afraid we'll be exposed during the hunt. Haha. Although he said that, everyone could see the smug look on Duo Kang's face. It was as if he was saying, I'm shining, I'm proud. If it was the first batch of people, they would definitely have a lot of insights and could provide guidance to these people. Unfortunately, generation after generation, from the elders to the juniors, from birth until now, they had all gotten used to the life of having the fire seed fused into their bodies. To them, this was the most ordinary life. There was nothing special about it. Just like how they couldn't understand what it felt like to have the fire seed fused into their bodies, these people in the old haunt would only be able to understand the feeling of having the fire seed fused into their bodies. At this time, many people in the old haunt began to look forward to it. Some people even wondered if the color of the totem would change after the fusion of the fire seed. Merging with the fire seed was an important matter that concerned the rise and fall of the tribe, so they could not be careless. Although the two shamans often argued because of some ideological conflicts, they put aside their prejudices and carefully studied the notes left behind by their ancestors. No one else could see these things, so only the two of them could figure it out. When the time came, it would depend on them. No, there was one more. Xian, what do you think this sentence means? The old shaman pointed at a sentence on a scroll and asked Xiao Xian. He couldn't figure out the meaning of this sentence, but he didn't want to ask the old woman, so he asked Xiao Xian first. If Xiao Xian didn't know, then he would ask the old woman. In the notes left behind by their ancestor, Qi, the method of merging with the fire seed was written in detail. Many of them were learned from the shamans of the Taiha tribe, but later, generations of Yanjiao shamans found some techniques and proposed some hypotheses to better merge with the fire seed. But hypotheses were just hypotheses, so no one could verify them. They could only remember these and make decisions based on the situation. After 2 days, not to mention the two shamans, even Xiao Xian's mind was filled with the fire seed. Old Ko saw that Xiao Xian came back tired every day, not physically, but mentally, so he wanted to make something good for Xiao Xian. In the morning, he asked Xiao Xian, "What do you want to eat?" Xiao Xian chewed on a piece of barbecued meat and answered absent-mindedly, "Fire seed." Old Ko was stunned on the spot. When they finally came up with a plan, Xiao Xian temporarily got out of that state. In 7 days, the tribe will hold a sacrificial ceremony, a very important one. Every Yanjiao warrior must be there, whether it's the patrolling warriors, the sick, or the children who haven't been weaned. The two shamans had jointly given the order, so no one dared to take it lightly. Now, the warriors who went out to hunt had all returned. No one went out these days, and the trading team hadn't gone out for a long time. Except for those who were blacklisted by the Yanjiao, everyone else, as long as they were of the Yanjiao bloodline, regardless of whether they had awakened their totemic power or not, had to be there for the ceremony. As the tribe grew bigger, there were many loopholes in the previous management. There might even be some people with bad intentions hiding among them. Therefore, other than the more important decision-makers in the tribe and the people they absolutely trusted, no one else knew about the merging of the fire seed. This was to prevent any changes from happening. But everyone could feel that something was about to happen. Some people said that the Yanjiao tribe was preparing for war, while others guessed something else. Chief Ao asked people to take note of those who liked to spread rumors and pay special attention to them in the future. If those people were really disloyal, Chief Ao wouldn't be merciful. The ceremony had been notified. The shamans also said that they didn't have to wear the ceremonial animal robes, but they had to be clean and tidy. They had to bathe and clean themselves properly. There would be warriors checking them, and those who didn't pass would be taken out and cleaned before coming back. This was a very important ceremony. It was the first complete Yanjiao tribe ceremony in 1,000 years. As the day approached, the atmosphere in the tribe became more tense. Even Jing Luo and the others couldn't calm down. Duo Li asked his father in private, what will happen if the merging of the fire seed fails? In the end, Duo Kong didn't say a word and beat Duo Li up. How could he not be beaten up for provoking Duo Kong at such a critical time? 7 days passed quickly. According to the tribe's tradition, the ceremony would begin in the evening, after the sun had set. This time was no different. It was reasonable to say that the moon in the sky should be very bright at this time, but there were thick clouds in the sky. Especially since the evening, the clouds got thicker and thicker, completely blocking the moonlight in the sky. In the forest without moonlight, the night was very dark. Fires were lit everywhere in the tribe. The two shamans stood solemnly in front of the fire pit. The old lady had never experienced the summoning of the ancient fire seed in the fire pit. She didn't say much at this time and just followed the plan. This time, there were more than 4,000 people participating in the ceremony. Ao drew out a piece of land for them. According to the order, the leaders stood in front, the senior totemic warriors in front, then the junior totemic warriors and those who hadn't awakened stood at the back. Of course, those who had contributed greatly to the tribe would also stand in front. The rules were the same as before. Xiao Xian was the closest to the fire pit other than the two shamans. On the 6 bone ornaments around his neck, the 6 round beads were no longer as dull as they had been a few days ago. Instead, they were much more lustrous. With the incantation, the flames in the fire pit rose faster than before. However, after witnessing all kinds of strange things with the fire seed these days, everyone could watch calmly. The high flames lit up the surroundings. There was no music, no sacrificial dancers, and no 3 flames in the fire pit. Only the loud chanting of the incantation could be heard. After the flames in the fire pit rose, the totem pattern of the 2 horns appeared. When the totem patterns appeared, the totem patterns on all the totem warriors' bodies also appeared. Some of them had dark patterns, while the others had brighter totem patterns, which were very eye-catching. The flames in the fire pit rose higher and higher, swaying without wind. Even the people standing outside could hear the swaying sound of the flames. Xiao Xian felt the totem flame in his mind become active with the flames in the fire pit. The flame expanded a lot and the shell that covered the totem flame also began to flicker. On the bone ornament's round ball, there was a puff sound. The flame extended forward and connected with the flames in the fire pit. This time, the flame giant didn't appear. Xiao Xian had a feeling that the flame that formed the flame giant had all merged into the fire pit. All the blood in his body seemed to be boiling, surging in his blood vessels. The totem power in his body was like a torrent, filling his whole body in the blink of an eye. Crack 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 crack, the crisp sound of burning firewood, or the sound of rocks being burned and exploding, came from the fire pit. 6 fire veins appeared on the ground like burning magma, extending from the fire pit. They became thicker and thicker, as if they were going to forcefully crack the ground. Different from the fire veins in the previous sacrificial ceremonies, this time, the fire veins on the ground were like growing roots, extending outwards. The closer they were to the fire pit, the thicker they became. The people standing here felt like they were standing on a rock flow. Near the fire pit, the distance between the 6 fire veins became very close as the fire veins became thicker. The fire veins and the flames in the fire pit bloomed together with unprecedented light. Crack crack, it seemed like something was going to break out of the ground. With such a sound, the 6 fire veins that extended from the fire pit rushed out of the ground. They were like buried fire dragons that were about to break out of the ground, dancing up and down. Every time they rose and fell, a section of the underground fire vein rushed out of the ground. At this time, the stones in the fire pit all turned red. Crack crack crack. The stones that formed the fire pit made cracking sounds, and some flames rushed out of the ground. After the red flames rushed out, some blue flames followed. There weren't many, but they were like the calyx at the bottom of a flower, supporting the flames above. The flames that covered the entire fire pit gathered towards the center and rose into the air. The 6 fire veins that were dancing in the air also gathered towards the center, shrinking into the flames above the fire pit. The root of the fire that had been buried deep under the fire pit in the old haunt was out of the fire pit. Chapter 500. Xiao Xian had heard that the old haunt had Yanjiao's roots, which referred to the fire vein. If the fire seed was not connected to the fire vein, it would not be complete. Now, the fire seed was connected to the fire vein, completely separated from the fire pond. Only some blue flames supported it, like a flower blooming above the fire pond. According to the plan, the first stage was to separate the fire seed from the fire pond. Now, the first stage was successfully completed. Looking at the fire seed floating above the fire pond, the old shaman, A.O., and the others had complicated expressions. From today on, everything would change. In the future, he would never see the tinder in the fire pit again. The roots of the old haunt were gone. But now was not the time to think too much. The 2 shamans looked at each other, raised their hands, and put them close to the flames in the fire pond. The second stage was about to begin. After the fire seed was separated from the fire pond, the second stage was to extract the fire seed from the bodies of Zheng Luo and the others. The 2 shamans chanted incantations at the same time. Their power carried the blue flames, reaching into the fire pond. The flames in the fire pond swayed, as if summoning something. The magma-like totem patterns on the bodies of Zheng Luo and the others glowed brighter and brighter. When they were at their brightest, it was as if there was a source of light shining inside their bodies. The light shone through the totem patterns on their bodies. It was extremely eye-catching. However, when the light reached its peak, sparks could be seen on the totem patterns. The sparks then expanded into flames, burning along the totem patterns. Finally, the flames separated from their bodies and gathered above their bodies. This was similar to the fire vein on the ground earlier. Starting from their hands and feet, as the flames left their bodies, the bright totem patterns began to darken and darken. Palms, elbows, arms, shoulders, ankles, knees, thighs. When all the flames gathered at the center of their eyebrows, the totem patterns on their faces turned dark. Only the center of their eyebrows shone brightly. It was not a big dot, but it was extremely bright, like a miniature sun. Finally, this dot of flame left their bodies, floated out, and gathered back at the fire pit. Thousands of glowing spots, like an upgraded version of fireflies on a summer night, surged towards the fire pond. The flames floating above the fire pond glowed brighter with the influx of light, illuminating the surroundings as if it was daytime. When the last bit of light entered, the flames in the fire pond made a whoosh sound, as if satisfied and excited, jumping and howling. In the flames, the 2-horned totem was especially bright, like the horns of a giant beast, eager to rush out and show its power. The fire seed was born from heaven and earth. When it changed, the people in the old haunt could clearly feel that heaven and earth was filled to the brim to a terrifying majestic aura. The second stage, the extraction of the fire seed was completed. Seeing this, the two shamans were slightly relieved. However, they could not let their guard down. They had to be extremely careful with the last step. If the tribe had decided to keep the ancient fire seed, it would have ended here. Although it had been separated for thousands of years, the fire seed could finally be considered as complete now. After 1,000 years, the fire seed, was finally, after 1,000 years, the fire was, after 1,000 years, the fire seed was broken to the fire, to be to twos, to the people s's. The guilt that had gathered in Zheng Luo's and the others' hearts finally dissipated. The old shaman sighed. Since they had decided to take that path, they had to walk it with determination. They could not hesitate, and they could not be distracted. Closely following the second stage was the last step, which was also the most crucial step. They had to integrate the complete fire seed into every warrior's body. The sound of the shaman's incantation became louder and louder. The flames in the fire pond suddenly shot up into the sky, like a cloud-piercing knife suddenly pulled out from the ground. The tip of the knife pierced through the sky. This unparalleled divine weapon seemed to want to break through the endless night. The tip of the fire pierced through the clouds, illuminating the thick clouds above. The layers of clouds seemed to be ignited, and this change was spreading outwards from the center of the fire. The thick clouds gradually turned fiery red. The clouds above the old haunt had such a strange scene, and this change was still continuing. Under the sky, the originally pitch-black forest, the rolling mountains in the distance, the endless forest on the ground, and the winding river that led to an unknown end, everything was covered in a layer of fiery red. Under this strange phenomenon, flocks of birds flew up in the forest at night. Different species of birds mixed together, screeching. Regardless of whether they were from their own species, they all flew up into the sky, flapping their wings hard in the direction of the Yanjiao tribe. A large flock of birds flew into the distance like a moving cloud. The beasts that had already fallen asleep, or the predators that were hunting at night, were also startled by this strange phenomenon. They roared, their voices echoing in the boundless mountain forest. In the Wuxia tribe, the fire seed in the fire pond had shrunk to the size of a pea, as if it would go out at any moment. What's going on? What's going on? Tell me. Wuxia's chief, Feng Wu, grabbed the shaman's clothes and shouted, his eyes filled with uncontrollable fear. Even the last time the Yanjiao tribe came here to ignite the fire seed, they had never encountered such a thing. This kind of power made them feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Why did this happen? Looking up at the sky, the fiery red clouds had almost reached their tribe. Then looking at the forest, the sky was fiery red, as if the entire sky was on fire. Was this the power of the fire seed? Why did the fire seed have such power? Even in the other big tribes, such a thing had never happened before. The young Wuxia shaman, who was being carried by Feng Wu, did not answer because he was also shocked. He had felt uneasy and thought that something would happen, but he did not expect such a shocking vision of heaven and earth. He couldn't help but think of a rumor he had heard in the desert. It was a rumor about the fire seed, about the ancestors of the slave masters. How could this be? He had racked his brains and used countless means to find the answer from the slave owners, but he had never succeeded. He had only touched a corner of it. But how did the Yanjiao people know? Where did they find the answer? The more the shaman thought about it, the colder his heart became. Their tribe was too close to the fire seed suppression. Even the warriors of the Wuxia tribe were affected mentally, let alone the fire seed. The aura between heaven and earth made them tremble, and their pores felt like they were about to explode. It was as if they were standing next to a fire pit in Yanjiao. The strong repulsion made them feel uncomfortable from the bones to the skin. In comparison, the slave masters were much more relaxed. Although they also felt uncomfortable in this atmosphere, they could take it better than the warriors of the Wuxia tribe. At this time, even if no one said anything, they knew that something strange had happened in the forest. Only the Yinjiao tribe could cause such a change. Thinking of this, the slave masters could not help but regret. If they had known this would happen, they would have agreed to attack the Yinjiao tribe when half of the Yinjiao tribe left. Even if they could not take them down, they could have caused them a lot of trouble. Perhaps the change would not have happened so quickly. At the same time, the fire seeds all over the continent were also changing to varying degrees. In the Mang tribe. On the bamboo mountain, the shaman of the Mang tribe looked in the direction of the fearsome beast forest with a puzzled expression. "Shaman, what on earth happened? I feel a little uncomfortable." The chief of the Mang tribe had been feeling uneasy since the beginning. He thought about everything that had happened recently but could not find the reason. Not only the chief of the Mang tribe, but other people also felt it. The higher the level of the totem warriors, the more sensitive they were, the stronger this feeling was. It made them unable to sleep. The shaman of the Mang tribe looked in that direction and carefully sensed it. This aura is from the Yinjiao fire seed. The Yinjiao tribe? What happened to them? The chief of the Mang tribe was confused. 2 days ago, he heard that the Yinjiao tribe went to the desert and brought back many people. He did not know who those people were or what the Yinjiao people were doing. He had also guessed that the Yinjiao people might have brought many slaves from the desert, but according to the information he heard, those people did not seem to be slaves. Until now, they had not figured out the answer. I don't know either. But the Yinjiao fire seed is indeed changing greatly. This change is very strange. I have never heard of it. The shaman of the Mang tribe said in a serious voice. Such an unknown change made him extremely worried. The Yinjiao people were not stupid. They would not joke about the fire seed. The Yinjiao tribe had been quiet for 2 years, so they thought they would keep a low profile and live in the fearsome beast forest. According to the ancestral records, the Yinjiao people's golden age had passed 1,000 years ago. The Yinjiao people's golden age was long gone. Even though they had been in the limelight a few times, it did not change people's impression of them. The Yinjiao people had disappeared for nearly 1,000 years. It was said that the Yinjiao people did not even know how to make pottery. They were far behind them. In the bottom of their hearts, these big tribes had never really taken the Yinjiao seriously. They only saw them as a tool to control the Wuxia tribe. They had once felt sorry for the Yinjiao. After all, they had fallen from the peak. It was really sad. But more than that, they were glad that the peak Yinjiao was long gone. There was no strong Yinjiao, no arrogant and hot-tempered Yinjiao to compete with them. It was a blessing for these tribes to have one less competitor. But now, the shaman of the Mang tribe's eyelids kept twitching. Something unexpected was happening, but they did not know what was going on. In other tribes, the situation was similar to the Mang tribe. No matter if it was the ordinary warriors or the shamans in the tribe, they all had a strange feeling, especially the shamans of each tribe. They were very sensitive to the changes of the fire seed, and the unknown changes made them anxious. Even in the Rain tribe, which was far away from the fearsome beast forest, Yang Sui also felt the changes on the other side of the continent. Maybe because of the distance, the feeling was not strong. But with his ability, he could tell which tribe the fire seed belonged to. He had felt the same feeling in the old land of Yinjiao. Has it started? Yang Sui walked to the fire pit of the Rain tribe and looked at the swaying flames. The change had begun. Chapter 501. Fearsome Beast Mountain Forest. In Yinjiao, changes were still happening. They weren't interested in the reactions of the other tribes on the mainland, and they didn't have the time to care about anything else. At this time, everyone was staring at the direction of the fire seed. There was only one voice in their minds, and that was the call of the fire seed. The two shamans controlled their power according to the method compiled in their ancestors' notes to control the changes in the fire seed. However, even though they were working together, they were exhausted after persisting for so long. Some of the ancestors' notes after Qi had recorded some possible situations when fusing the fire seed, as well as various deduced solutions. However, at this time, the two shamans were hesitant. Even if they had a backup plan, they were still quite worried. They didn't expect that fusing the fire seed would consume so much power, and the backup plan would also consume a lot of power. Back then, their ancestor, Qi, had used up almost all of his power. Not long after the fusion, he passed away. The two shamans were already mentally prepared and had written their last words before coming over. Just as the two shamans were about to burn their own lives to complete the last step of the fusion, they suddenly felt their bodies lighten. The gap that they couldn't fill was suddenly filled. The two shamans looked over in shock and saw Xiao Xian standing there next to the fire pit. Although he was one step further than the two shamans, the power coming from Xiao Xian's hand was much more abundant than the two shamans. Outside the azure flames, there was a layer of fiery red flame flowing from Xiao Xian's hand to the flames in the fire pit. In fact, Xiao Xian didn't expect this either. His actions just now weren't under his control. He had already stretched out his hand without realizing it. The power of the ancestor. Xiao Xian lowered his head and looked at the 6 bone ornaments hanging in front of his chest. The flames on the ornaments hadn't stopped and were still moving forward. In Xiao Xian's mind, the outer cover of the totemic flames was shining with a white light. The totemic flames inside the cover were burning fiercely, and it was unprecedentedly active. At the same time, the giant flaming saber above the fire pit that seemed to connect heaven and earth began to retract, just like the scene just now. The only difference was that the thick clouds in the sky still maintained the fiery red color. The giant blade that connected the heaven and the earth shrank into a floating flame, which was twice as big as the previous flame. If it was still in the fire pit, it would definitely overflow because the fire pit could no longer contain it. But soon, the flame began to shrink, as if it was condensed. The smaller it was, the brighter it became. When it finally shrunk to the size of a soccer ball, it suddenly emitted a dazzling light. Then, countless sparks shot out from it. It seemed to have no pattern, but if one looked closely, they would find that the sparks that shot out from the air were all aimed at one person with incomparable precision. Xiao Xian was the first to feel this change. He felt a bright light fuse into his body and enter the totem flame in his mind. The totem flame in his body soared, expanded, and shone even brighter. Surging power surged within his body, swimming through his meridians and blood. Excited, the totem flame in his mind seemed to have been added with new firewood, as if a barrel of oil had been poured into it, burning fiercely. The totem flame in his mind was in a state of extreme excitement. If the totem power in his body was like a rolling river in the past, now it was like a vast ocean. This was not a simple change, but a qualitative and quantitative change. The abundant power was boiling in his body, as if steam was erupting from his pores. The airflow around his body was swirling and vibrating, as if countless blades were shooting out from his body. In the windless night, his sleeves and trousers were swaying, and the sound of animal skins or linen being cut could be heard incessantly. The reason why everyone was not required to wear the sacrificial animal clothing was that they considered the changes that might occur during the fusion. Where his feet were pressed against the ground, it seemed that there was a burst of air erupting from there, like layers of waves. The weeds on the ground were shattered, and drifted away with the debris and dust. Xiao Xian could hear the sound of his blood flowing in his body, and the strong beating of his heart. The power of the fire seed merged under his skin, seeped into his bones, and flowed into his blood. His body was strengthened, and when he mobilized his totem power, the totem power flowing in his body became more condensed and wider. The power in his body changed from being passive when the fire seed was fused into his body, and gradually returned to his control, controlling the changes that would follow. The atmosphere was very intimate, and Xiao Xian could see countless flames scattered around in his special vision. It was like seeing delicious food after a starving meal, and Xiao Xian could not wait to absorb these flames. The fire seed had already been dispersed into every Yanjiao's body, and these flames were absorbed along with the fire seed. The more flames he absorbed, the stronger the fire seed in his body. Xiao Xian could clearly feel these changes, just like during the sacrificial ceremony, when everyone absorbed the scattered flames during the flying flame stage. However, after observing the others, Xiao Xian found that this was different from the sacrificial ceremony. The amount of flames he absorbed had nothing to do with the distance from the fire pit. Some people standing at the back even absorbed more than those standing at the front. This change might be related to talent and strength. Everyone had the same fire seed in their body, but their strength might not be the same in the future. Talent, and how much effort they put in, would all make the final result different. How far they could develop, and whether they could make the fire seed in their body stronger, depended on the individual. In the past, he had always thought that the stronger the fire seed, the stronger the person would be. But now that he had truly fused with the fire seed, Xiao Xian found that this was not the case. The stronger the person, the stronger the fire seed. In the days to come, these changes would continue. Where did the dissipated power of the fire seed go? If it still existed between heaven and earth, then they would be able to capture the scattered power again. Perhaps this was what people had always wondered, the growth of the fire seed. At the same time, Xiao Xian noticed another very obvious change. The totemic patterns on the surface of his body had become wider and wider, and the color had changed. The totemic patterns on the people from the old haunt were originally darker, but for those who had fused with the fire seed, their totemic patterns were a brighter lava color. Xiao Xian's totemic patterns were even brighter than theirs. But now, the totemic patterns on everyone's body had changed. It wasn't as dark as the former, nor was it as bright as the latter. Instead, it was a deep purplish black, but it wasn't a pure color. If one were to look closely, they would discover that the patterns were like a layer that covered the flames, blocking out the light. After the complete fusion, the changes in the totemic patterns were more restrained, but they gave off a more dangerous feeling. This was because the totemic patterns were more suitable for the forest. When they covered the entire body, it was more like a hidden protective color. Like the stripes on a beast, like the evolution of a species' survival. The fire in the fire pit that lit up the forest gradually dimmed. The floating flames had disappeared. The fire seed would no longer burn in the fire pit. Seeing such a fire pond, many people felt a sense of loss. But very quickly, they became excited again. They could feel the changes in their bodies. It would make them stronger, and it would also make them live longer. Zheng Luo and the others felt it the most, their eyes burning with passion. From now on, they would no longer be called sick, no longer short-lived ghosts. They could fight for longer in the forest. Their battles would not end here. The flames in the clouds in the sky gradually weakened, and everything on the ground returned to darkness. Looking at the fire pit that no longer had any light, the shamaness knelt and kowtowed. The others followed suit, using the tribe's highest ceremony to pay tribute to the departing fire seed. From now on, they would usher in a new era. This day would leave a deep mark in Yanjiao's history. This day would be marked as Yanjiao's Memorial Day for the fire seed. Every year on this day, a ceremony would be held to commemorate the fire seed's change. This was the most important day after the ceremony at the beginning of each year. Yanjiao will return to its peak. The glory they had lost would be reclaimed. As for the Yanjiao wanderers who left, when they abandoned the Yanjiao tribe, they lost their chance to rejoin the fire seed. The changes in Yanjiao were naturally felt by the shamans of each tribe. How could this be? The shaman of the Mang tribe was shocked. He lost his composure. What's wrong? What happened to the Yanjiao tribe? The chief of the Mang tribe asked quickly. Although he could feel the changes, he did not have the sensitivity of the shaman. The flaming horn's fire seed has disappeared. The Mang shaman's voice was shaking. He was shocked to the core. Disappeared? How is that possible? The chief of the Mang tribe almost jumped in shock. Yes, how was that possible? No matter how useless the Yanjiao tribe was, it was impossible for their fire seed to be extinguished so quickly. Moreover, the changes just now did not seem like the fire seed was extinguished. The chief of the Mang tribe felt that it was impossible. No, it's not really gone. It's still here, but it exists in a different way. The shaman's voice was almost inaudible. He was deep in thought. Not only the shamans of the Mang tribe, but the other tribes were also shocked. However, the shamans of these tribes were not the only ones who were shocked. In the desert, in the expanded Rock Hill city, a similar conversation was taking place. Did you feel it? The fire seed is abnormal. Yes, they have found a way to rejoin the fire seed. If they were only suspicious when they heard the news from the Yanjiao tribe, now they were 100% sure. The Yanjiao tribe is really a magical tribe. Shi Shu looked in the direction of the Flaming Horns tribe, but quickly shifted his line of sight to the other side, in the direction of the sea. The world will change. What we can do is to gain more bargaining chips before it changes, said a voice whose age could not be determined. Chapter 502. The fusion of the fire seed required time to get used to it, to fully absorb the energy that was not fully absorbed. Hence, in the next 2 days, the tribe was much quieter. Other than the warriors on patrol duty, everyone else stayed in their own houses to continue the fusion process. Xiao Xian did not know how much the others had changed, but he knew his own and Old Ku's changes. These 2 days, Old Ku seemed to have nowhere to vent his energy. He could spend the whole night in the stone house, and the next day, he would cook meat soup and roast beast legs. In the past, Old Ku had to use crutches to move around, and Caesar had to carry him if he wanted to walk further. Now, Old Ku threw away his crutches and jumped around the house, jumping around energetically. Xiao Xian was worried that Old Ku would get tired from jumping around, but Old Ku enjoyed it. This is really good, don't you believe me? If you don't believe me, I'll show you every day. You look much more energetic now, you look radiant. Xiao Xian smiled. Xiao Xian was not trying to flatter him. Old Ku used to have more white hair, but now he had more black hair, and only a small part of his hair was white. If he took good care of his hair, Xiao Xian was not sure if his hair would turn completely black one day. The smile on Old Ku's face started to pile up. After the fusion of the fire seed, Old Ku had changed a lot. In the past, Old Ku's health was not good. He had lost a leg while hunting, and later, he made a living by making stone tools. His life was not good, and he was sick. Although Xiao Xian had been collecting herbs for him to recover, it was not as obvious as the fusion of the fire seed. The others did not change as much as Old Ku. No matter what, a good change was always gratifying. After breakfast, Xiao Xian went out and bumped into Duo Kong and the others. Duo Kong and Guang Yi were talking about totemic patterns. I still have a lot of colored mud. I didn't expect that after the complete fusion of the fire seed, I wouldn't need to use it at all. In the future, I won't need to use it when I hunt. Although there was one less problem, Duo Kong still couldn't get used to it. He packed his things and prepared for the hunt the day after tomorrow. He kept feeling like something was missing. TSK, but they had to get used to it. Although the totem runes were not as bright as before, they knew that these runes were the most suitable for hunting among the 3 runes. Before Guang Yi could say anything, Duo Kong continued, actually, after a while, it's pretty good. I heard that this entire forest is ours. In the future, we won't have to worry about intruding into other people's territory. We can hunt freely, ha ha ha. Guang Yi shook his head, ignoring the overly excited Duo Kong. He clasped his hands behind his back and planned to find someone else to spar with. He hadn't moved for 2 days, his hands were itchy. They had to wait until the day after tomorrow to go hunting. Xiao Xian walked around to see how everyone was adapting. Without the fire seed, the people of the old haunt felt a bit strange. They gazed at the fire pit without any light from afar with a disappointed and frustrated expression. They felt that without the fire seed, it was as if they had lost their roots. But in order to walk towards a brighter future, this change had to be made. Plus, people were the foundation of the tribe. As long as the people were there, the hearts were there. Everything was there, no matter where they lived in the future. After walking for a while, Xiao Xian walked towards the fields. When they came back from the other side of the sea, they brought back many seeds. They were all good seeds given to them by Ji Ju. In the past, Xiao Xian always thought that they only ate normal food. Later, he found out that many tribes, especially the bigger ones, had some precious seeds. However, they protected them very tightly, as if they were afraid that others would find out. Even if they traded, they rarely took them out. Most of the seeds that the trading teams brought back were normal seeds. The food they grew was basically for the people in the tribe who hadn't awakened their totemic power. But now, the seeds they brought back were different. The ones in charge of planting were still Chi and the others. They were familiar with it. The people in charge of planting also learned from them. In the future, the tribe's fields would definitely expand. If they didn't learn quickly, they wouldn't have enough manpower. Seeing Xiao Xian, Chi hurried over and bowed respectfully. She respected Xiao Xian from the bottom of her heart. Without Xiao Xian, they wouldn't have been able to come to the old haunt. Grand Elder! Grand Elder! The others hurried over. In the past, Xiao Xian was the only elder. Now, he was the Grand Elder. Although he was still the only elder, it wouldn't be long before there would be more elders in the tribe. The two shamans had already discussed that after training Guizhe, they would step down. After all, there would always be conflicts between the two shamans. Not to mention their views, they would often quarrel over how they addressed each other. Sometimes, when they heard people call them shaman, they would respond and misunderstand each other. The old lady wanted the old man to change the way he addressed her. The male shaman on the other side of the sea was called Wu. She wanted the old man to just call her Wu. Unfortunately, the old man refused. Why should he change the way he addressed her? It's a name passed down from our ancestors. Why did he have to learn from the slave masters? He wouldn't change it. The old lady was so angry that she almost hit him with her cane. Other than these small conflicts, they felt that at their age, they were lucky to be able to live for a few more years with the fire seed fusion. It was time for them to step down. It was time for the young people to take up the mantle. The two of them would step down as elders. Ever since the fire seed fusion, Guizhe had inherited the power of inheritance and was valued by the old lady. Perhaps it was because he had been learning from the shamans for a long time, or because he was talented. It was rare for the two shamans to have the same attitude in training their successors. Sometimes, they would disagree and quarrel. So now, Guizhe was running between the two sides. Today, he would learn from the old man, and tomorrow, he would go to the old lady. The pharmacy was handed over to other people. Xiao Xian also went to help when he had time. He taught the new apprentices in the pharmacy. The alligator snapping turtle grew bigger. It ate and slept every day. Although it ate medicinal waste, it grew well. Xiao Xian wanted to pry the turtle shell off and make it into armor. As for the two chiefs didn't step down for the time being. However, they also said that when the new chiefs came out, they would step down and become elders like the shamans. They would only participate in the discussion of the tribe's important matters and wouldn't care about anything else. The new leader would be chosen from the 3 team leaders. That was why Duokong, Guihe, and Ta were doing their best to perform. The reason why Duokong was looking forward to the hunt was because he wanted to show his strength as soon as possible. Although there would be 4 more elders soon, Xiao Xian's special position was still unsurpassed. So, the Grand Elder was chosen. He was also the only elder who could control 6 bone ornaments. The other elders didn't have any ornaments. This was different from the past. Even if Xiao Xian took out the 6 ornaments to share, the others wouldn't want them. They couldn't light up the ornaments before and felt that they didn't have the right to wear them. No one wanted to challenge the Grand Elder's position. So now, when the people in the tribe saw Xiao Xian, they would call him Grand Elder. Xiao Xian looked at the situation in the field. How much did we plant? We planted everything suitable for this season. Chi brought Xiao Xian around the field and told him about the results. Chi went to the shamans to collect the seeds. The 2 shamans divided the work. The old man was in charge of the seeds and the old woman was in charge of the salt. They brought a lot of seeds when they came. When the Guizhe took over, the 2 shamans would give the seeds to the Guizhe for safekeeping. At first, the shamans thought that Xiao Xian was the one who got the seeds, so Xiao Xian should be the one keeping the seeds. However, Xiao Xian would go hunting with the hunting team. Even if he wasn't hunting, he wouldn't sit in the house all day waiting for people to find him. Other than the people working in the fields, there were also many people working in the animal pen. The 2 teams often gathered to exchange their experiences. When Xiao Xian went over, the person who took care of the duck shed was still regretting that he didn't bring the green ducks over. Xiao Xian was about to check on the wild boars that he had caught during the hunt a few days ago. Xiao Xian heard someone calling him and looked over. It was the 2 chiefs and the 3 team leaders. Were the 5 of them gathered together to discuss something? What are you going to do? Xiao Xian walked over and asked. Ao didn't say anything. He just tilted his head slightly in one direction. Xiao Xian understood. That direction was where the core seed was placed. The core seed was a secret in the tribe. Even the metal objects they brought back were mostly put aside. Duo Kong even played with stone axes to his heart's content. He always thought that stones were too easy to break. How could he hunt? But ever since he saw Xiao Xian use stone tools, Duo Kang's impression changed. When he came here, he understood the wonders of stone tools better. Xiao Xian didn't ask Tua and Lei to bring the core seed back to hide it. Come, let's go take a look. Ao called Xiao Xian. The 6 of them walked over. Because the core seed was too dangerous, it was placed far from the tribe. It would take some time to get there. On the way, Ao thought for a moment and asked, Xian, do you feel that when you eat the 1,000-grain gold, the fire seed's power in your body fuses faster? Ao ate the 1,000-grain gold later than the others, but because of this, the feeling was even clearer. Xiao Xian really didn't feel it. Perhaps he was different from the others. The shamaness once said that Xiao Xian was different from the others, whether it was his awakening or the appearance of his totemic patterns. So what the others felt, Xiao Xian might not be able to. He looked at the others. Zheng Luo, Duo Kong, Ta and the others all agreed. Xiao Xian thought back to Ji Ju's words. That should be it. Ji Ju once said that the 1,000-grain gold would grow in the most suitable direction. Perhaps because we need this change, it will grow in this direction. It comes from the same plant as the 1,000-grain gold in Ji Ju's place. But its growth is very different because it grows in Yanjiao land. 1,000-grain gold, what a magical thing. Ao sighed. They didn't have to envy the other tribes for their precious crops. Their tribe had more treasures, especially the 1,000-grain gold. It was the treasure of their tribe. They wouldn't share it with others. Even if they offered more in exchange, they wouldn't give it to them. Chapter 503. Not long after leaving the tribe, Xiao Xian saw the mountains where Cha used to rest. There were still scratches left by the eagle's claws on the mountain walls. When Cha first came to the old haunt, it preferred high places and didn't like to be surrounded by people. After all, it didn't have much contact with the Yanjiao people, unlike the other ferocious beasts. It had encircled several mountains around the tribe. When Xiao Xian came back, he didn't see Cha-Cha. He learned from Ao that Cha-Cha flew around the desert after sending Tuo and Lei back to the old haunt. Then it ran to the Hui tribe and took away a few of their eagles. However, the people of the Hui tribe also said that the giant mountain eagles were probably going to Eagle Mountain in a group, so Ao and the others were not too worried. They didn't know much about the giant mountain eagles, but Cha-Cha had been there once and had experience. Although they didn't know which path they were going to take, since they were all in a group, it should be safe. Not long after this winter, the traveling team of the Hui tribe from the grassland came to the ferocious beasts' mountain forest. They also sent a message that several eagles of their tribe had returned, but they didn't see Cha-Cha. They didn't say much, as if they wanted to say something but stopped. Ao didn't think much about it because of the strange fire seed. They went to Eagle Mountain but didn't appear with the other eagles. Did they not leave Eagle Mountain? Or did they leave Eagle Mountain and go somewhere else? Xiao Xian didn't know. When Xiao Xian asked about it, Ao regretted it. After all, they didn't ask much at that time. The people of the Hui tribe didn't stay here for long and left with a message. If Xiao Xian wanted to figure it out, he had to go to the grassland and ask the people of the Hui tribe in detail. The communication between the people of the Hui tribe and the giant mountain eagles was very normal. They could understand the meaning of the giant mountain eagles. It was impossible for several eagles to go together without any news. The people of the Hui tribe definitely knew more about Cha-Cha. Xiao Xian didn't blame Ao and the others. After all, the situation was special. Besides, Cha-Cha had a bad temper. In the tribe, other than the old Ku and the shaman, it didn't want to talk to anyone else, let alone talk to them. When things here were settled, Xiao Xian planned to go to the grassland. After about half an hour, Xiao Xian could feel some changes. When you asked Tuo and Lei to bring the core seed back, we knew it was very dangerous, but we didn't expect it to be so lethal. Ao pointed at the thinning forest in front of them. Due to the soil and stone of this mountain, there weren't many plants. The higher they went, the less greenery there was. This was why Ao decided to put the core seed here. But it was so sparse, it was like a bald patch in the forest. It was frightening. There were not many plants here, and it was even rarer to see ferocious beasts on the mountain. Ao had been here many times. Occasionally, he could see one or two pheasants passing by below the mountainside. They did not live on this mountain, but came from other mountains. The core seed was placed on the mountain. There were originally some small caves, but we expanded them and put some good stones inside. Ao told Xiao Xian everything in detail. Zheng Luo and Duo Kong listened on the side. Their faces were red, and they looked like they wanted to rush over immediately. It was obvious that they weren't calm at all. On the other side of the sea, the core seed was controlled by the slave masters. All the bronze wares they had were bought from the slave masters or traded with merchants. They had never seen the core seed before. They didn't even know about the core seed, only vaguely aware of it. However, they thought it was too far away, so they didn't pay much attention to it. They didn't expect there to be a core seed in the old haunt. With the core seed, will we be able to make more gold wares? Duo Kong rubbed his hands in anticipation. Technically, yes. But no one in the tribe has tried it before. We don't know if it'll work. We'll have to try, answered Xiao Xian. When they were on the other side of the sea, the tribe's blacksmiths only modified weapons based on bronze wares. Even though Gong Jiaheng had taught them some techniques, he had never explained smelting techniques based on ores. The Yanjiao tribe could only use the theories Xiao Xian had provided. Xiao Xian's smelting techniques were a combination of the slave master's smelting techniques and the words he had taken from Gongjia Mountain. Back in the desert, Xiao Xian had snuck into Snowfield City and read about smelting in the place where the ancient scrolls were kept. Not only did it talk about the core seed, it also explained where the ores used for smelting came from. It also mentioned that the better the quality of the ores, the shorter the smelting time and the higher the metal content. Xiao Xian had recorded the slave master's failures and their successes. As for the words he had taken from Gongjia Mountain, they were very useful too. For example, there was the method of observing qi, the ratio of different metals used in smelting weapons, and the ring diagrams left behind by the Yi family's ancestors. The others did not understand the Yi family's ring diagrams, so they did not read them. However, the techniques and experiences mentioned earlier made the two chiefs and the three team leaders' eyes light up. I've heard from the Gongjia family that there's a type of green-faced fanged beast whose blood is very useful in making weapons. The swords it makes can easily cut through stone, said Xiao Xian. Really? The others looked at Xiao Xian. I've heard about it. I've never seen it with my own eyes. What does the green-faced fanged beast look like? We can't let it go when we hunt in the future, asked Jing Luo impatiently. The metal wares they used were not the best. Most of the metal wares they used were not even as good as the high-quality stone wares in the old haunt. However, whether it was the metal wares they used or the stone wares used in the old haunt, they all had many shortcomings. However, if these shortcomings could be improved, they would be able to make better metal wares, which would make it easier for them to hunt and more confident, which would be very satisfying. According to Hein, the green-faced fanged beast isn't big. It has a green face and thick skin. It has hooves but no horns and 2 long fangs. It often jumps around the mountains and looks very fierce. It's also very aggressive and often attacks other beasts. It's a herbivorous beast. As Xiao Xian spoke, the 5 of them did the same thing at the same time. They searched for animal skins or cloth to write down. Duo Kong found a piece of cloth but did not bring a pen or paint. He scratched his head and said to Jing Luo, "Boss, I'll copy after you write it down." Jing Luo looked up at him but did not speak. "Don't worry, there's no rush. I'll fill in what I missed when we get back," said Xiao Xian as he continued walking up the mountain. There were very few plants growing on the ground here. However, there were a few types of unknown grasses. They didn't look very conspicuous. If they were placed together with other flowers and plants, they would be easily overlooked. However, here, when other plants couldn't survive, they were still standing strong. Xiao Xian went over to pick some. He would study them when he got back. If they could withstand the core seed's influence and still grow here, they might be a rare medicine. It might be useful against the core seed's damage. It's there. Ao pointed ahead. There was a cave blocked by a large rock. There were no guards around the cave because the guards were all at the foot of the mountain. That way, they could avoid harm. Even if it was just a small injury, it would be a big problem in the long run. Plus, there were no other tribes in this forest. Other than the fearsome beasts, there were no other outsiders. There was no need to be so strict. The closer they got to the cave, the more danger they felt. It was uncomfortable and their bodies were emitting danger signals. Zheng Luo and Duo Kong were not used to seeing the core seed for the first time, but they could not suppress their excitement. Core seed, it was the core seed. Ao walked over and removed the stone that was blocking the entrance of the cave. However, he did not go in immediately. Instead, he opened a large animal skin bag that he had brought along. "Put this on." Xiao Xian took a simple gray robe from Ao. It was made of worm skin. Xiao Xian brought back 3 rolls of worm skin from Eagle Mountain. He only used one and left the other 2. After Tuo brought the core seed back, he followed Xiao Xian's instructions and found the worm skin to make these protective clothes. At that time, the soldiers who moved the stones in were all wearing these clothes. The 6 of them put on the clothes and walked in. There were some glowing water moon stones in the long passage. They did not need a torch to see what was inside. As they continued to walk, they arrived at a place with a larger space. It was circular in shape. Ao and the other warriors had worked hard to excavate this space back then. It was man-made. The core seed was in the middle. It was not much bigger than a fist but was extremely dangerous. That's the legendary core seed. Zheng Luo's throat twitched. He wanted to touch it but knew it was too dangerous. The closer he got, the more he felt a burning pain in the places not covered by the worm skin. There were stones around the core seed. The tribe spent a lot of time looking for stones in the forest. It was rare that they did not use the good stones to make stone tools. Instead, they moved most of them here. Xiao Xian looked around. Using the results from the ring diagram, he walked to a spot and looked at the stones. At this spot, the stones were the same distance away from the core seed. Many of them had irregular gold on their surfaces. This was where the core seed had the most copper. This was where the copper mine was produced. The magical core seed. They moved some of the copper ore out of this location, and then moved out a large stone from a different location, bringing all these stones back to the tribe. Chapter 504. It was nighttime when the 6 of them returned. They purposely waited for the tribesmen to rest before carrying the stones back. Because the smelting process was still in the experimental stage, they didn't know if it would succeed, so they didn't announce it yet. The next day, Zheng Luo's blacksmiths arrived. According to the slave master's requirements, they were just regular blacksmiths, but to the tribesmen, they were masters, so everyone called them Master XX. The blacksmiths blushed and waved their hands, saying they weren't skilled enough to be considered masters. Ever since they met Gongjiaheng, they didn't dare call themselves masters anymore. They were much more humble now. This time, Xiao Xian called them over to talk about smelting ores. They had already seen the theory behind it. A stone room for smelting ores was built at the edge of the tribe. The stones the 6 of them brought back yesterday were all placed inside. There were many guards around the stone room. Other than the chief, the leader and Xiao Xian's group, no one else was allowed to get close. Xiao Xian brought the blacksmiths over so the guards could recognize them. Zheng Luo's people aside, the people here weren't familiar with the blacksmiths. From now on, the 5 of them will be the blacksmiths here. They can enter the stone room freely, Xiao Xian said to the guards. After carefully memorizing the faces, voices and other characteristics of the 5 people, the guard nodded. They were assigned to such an important task, of course they had to treat it seriously. Ores, they wanted to have ores too. They had to prepare a smelting furnace, charcoal and other ores to be used as catalysts. These things were used for a few days, so when Duo Kong and the rest went out to hunt, they didn't see the stone room open. Xiao Xian had thought about smelting ores too. Even if he didn't know about ores, he could use the circular diagram to calculate the location of the ores. However, iron was harder to smelt than copper and there weren't many records on smelting ores. Xiao Xian didn't dare to try. No one knew what would happen to the core seed. Rice had to be eaten one bite at a time. It was better to smelt ores first. Good bronze wares were not inferior to others. Xiao Xian and the 5 blacksmiths smelted the copper ores in the stone room. They followed the Gongjia ancestors' method of observing the air and smelting. Then, they calculated the most suitable metal ratio to forge a copper sword. It was simple in theory but not in practice. There were too many factors that could change the outcome. If everyone could easily make a good bronze weapon, the Gongjia family would not be in such a high position. On this day, when Xiao Xian and the other craftsmen were experimenting again, someone came to report that people from the Lu tribe had arrived. The shaman said that if Xiao Xian was free, he should go over. There was no need for Xiao Xian to keep an eye on the work at hand. In the past few days, the other craftsmen had already gained experience. They picked up the work faster than Xiao Xian. After all, they had been exposed to this kind of thing for a long time. Even if they had just started smelting ores, they learned very quickly. Xiao Xian was also relieved to leave the work to them. "All right, I'll be right there." Xiao Xian sent the messenger back first, then said a few words to the 5 craftsmen in the stone room. He came out to wash his face before heading over. The Lu and Yanjiao tribes had been trading. Every year, the Lu tribesmen would visit 2 to 3 times. Sometimes, they were here to deliver baby beasts. Other times, they were invited by the Yanjiao tribe to teach them. After a few exchanges, the relationship between both parties was considered harmonious. The person who led the team this time was Yanjiao, someone Xiao Xian knew. It had been a long time since they last met. Yanjiao had always thought that something had happened to Xiao Xian. When he heard that Xiao Xian had returned to the tribe, he especially wanted to talk to Xiao Xian. The Lu tribe could start trading with the Yanjiao tribe because of Xiao Xian. "Huh, Xiao Xian, long time no see." Yanjiao looked at Xiao Xian and laughed loudly. "Indeed, long time no see. How's your tribe?" Xiao Xian asked. "Not bad. We've been robbed a few times." Speaking of this, Yanjiao's smile faded. "The Wanchur people?" Xiao Xian asked. "Yes, other than the Wanchur people, there are also the slaves of the slave masters. But they only robbed us once." Yanjiao was depressed. In the past, there was only the Wanchur tribe here. After the incident in the desert, the slave masters came out and there was one more problem. Fortunately, the slave masters mainly focused on recuperation. They didn't jump out to make enemies. They were also worried that the other major tribes would target them and rob them of their last stock. Even so, Yanjiao and the others didn't dare to come here often. It wasn't easy to come to the Yanjiao tribe. The Lu tribe didn't bring many things each time they came here. The Yanjiao tribe didn't trade large amounts of adult animals from them anymore. But this time, I didn't see anyone from the Wanchur tribe. What happened to them? Yanjiao asked. In the past, when they came here, they would always see some small groups of the Wanchur tribe. Today, they didn't see any of them. Who knows what they're thinking? Xiao Xian shook his head. Right, I heard that your tribe has a lot of new people. Yanjiao asked the first key question of the day. Yes, they were separated from the previous tribe. Now they're back. Which tribe lost more than 4,000 people at once? Yanjiao thought Xiao Xian didn't want to answer, so he asked another question. What happened to your tribe a few days ago? Why do I feel that the fire seed of your tribe seems? Yanjiao didn't want to say the word, gone. After all, for the tribesmen, such words were like curses. It was very unfriendly. The fire seed of our tribe just changed a little. You noticed it too? Xiao Xian was surprised. The Lu tribe was still some distance away from them. Of course we noticed it. Not only us, but other tribes also know that something happened to you. The Lu tribe was a nice tribe, and they were close to Yanjiao. So after that day, people came to them one after another to inquire about what happened. Hearing Yanjiao's words, Xiao Xian guessed that some people couldn't wait and would come to them soon. Before, it was because of the conflicts between the other tribes and Yanjiao. But since it was related to the fire seed, those people might come shamelessly. If they came to them, what would they do about the fire seed? Yanjiao chatted with Xiao Xian for a long time before leaving. They were annoyed by the other tribes' questions, and they were curious, so they came here. They couldn't ask about the secrets of the other tribes, but Yanjiao could feel the difference in the Yanjiao tribe. The fire seed of Yanjiao seemed to be gone, but also seemed to be still there. It was just not obvious. Strange Yanjiao people. Fortunately, although the Lu tribesmen were curious, they weren't very curious. If they couldn't figure it out, they stopped thinking about it and went on with their lives. They never fought with others for anything. As long as it didn't harm the interests of the Lu tribe, they didn't care. After Yan Jiu left with his people, Shao Xian went to the two shamans to discuss the fire seed. They discussed how to answer if those people came to them. The Yanjiao tribe could close their doors and not see anyone, but those people wouldn't give up easily. They might even use all kinds of tricks. It wasn't that they were afraid of them, but they had to be prepared. They didn't want to panic when something happened. The tribe was big, and many things had to be arranged in advance. However, the Wuxia tribe and the slave masters who escaped from the desert were indeed a big trouble. After all, they were close to here and had bad intentions. This nail had to be pulled out as soon as possible. Shao Xian touched the knife in his hand and thought. Shao Xian wasn't the only one who thought this way. The two chiefs had discussed it many times in private. It was just that Zheng Luo's people had just arrived and weren't used to it yet. Plus, they had merged with the fire seed, so they might not be in their best fighting condition. They just needed time. After going out to hunt once or twice and practicing more, they might be able to adjust their condition. At that time, the complete Yanjiao tribe, the new Yanjiao tribe, would be tested on the Wuxia tribe and the slave masters. A few days later, the first batch of hunters who went out to hunt after the merging of the fire seed returned. Looking at them, they adapted well and brought back a lot of prey. The results were good. Duo Kong didn't care about that. He was competing with Gigu and Ta, but this time, he didn't pay attention to how much prey they brought back. Instead, he paid attention to the green-faced fanged beast Shao Xian mentioned before. When Shao Xian saw the prey the three team leaders brought back, his facial muscles twitched uncontrollably. There were all sorts of strange-looking sheep, deer, cows and so on. But none of them matched the characteristics of the green-faced fanged beast. In other people's eyes, the three team leaders really had unique hobbies. Shao Xian, these aren't the same. Duo Kong asked expectantly. According to the description, none of them fit the description, said Shao Xian helplessly. The three team leaders showed obvious disappointment in their eyes. Duo Kong thought for a moment, then asked, can it only be the green-faced fanged beast? Can't it be other red-faced fanged beasts or white-faced fanged beasts? Actually, there are other fearsome beasts that can do it, but those are the Gongjia family's secret techniques. I've never seen them before and they might not be as effective as the green-faced fanged beast. However, there is one that can beat the green-faced fanged beast. I've seen it before. What is it? The three team leaders craned their necks like chickens waiting to be slaughtered. Stone worms, said Shao Xian. That's easy. Ta grinned. Anything above the fearsome beast level, continued Shao Xian. Ta fell silent. They had never seen fearsome beast-level stone worms before. Even if they did, they wouldn't emerge from the ground. They couldn't possibly dig into the ground to look for them, could they? The worms would probably run away before they could dig anything up. It would be extremely difficult. As for king-level beasts, Zheng Luo and the rest didn't dare to take the risk. Wouldn't that be suicide? Then let's look for the green-faced fanged beast. I don't believe we can't find one in this entire forest. Duo Kong didn't look at the prey anymore. He ran towards the smelting room. Gigu and Ta followed suit. They were equally anxious. To them, metal was a new experience. Watching them leave, Shao Xian pondered. There were no green-faced fanged beasts or stone worms. Were there any other suitable fearsome beasts? The Gongjia ancestors couldn't have tried every type, right? Chapter 505. Shao Xian purposely picked some ferocious beast's blood and tried to use it when refining bronzes. To him, using beast blood to refine weapons was indeed inconceivable, but in this place, there were many inconceivable things. According to the Gongjia ancestors, the impurities had to be removed from the ores. Then, they had to carefully control the temperature and observe the melting gas. After the black gas, yellow and white gas, and as the temperature of the furnace continued to rise, green flames would appear. Then, green and white gas would appear. When the metal was completely melted and only green gas was left, the next step was to mix beast blood with the casting process. Xiao Xian had experimented with many types of beast blood. He even made small molds and used them sparingly. After all, this was just an experiment. The tribe did not have many copper ores yet, they could not afford to waste too much. Unfortunately, the final result was still very depressing. The ancestors of the Gongjia family mixed beast blood into their bronze wares to strengthen them. However, not only did the blood fail to strengthen the bronze wares, it even destroyed the integrity of the bronze wares. It was easy to break. The tribe had hunted many fearsome beasts in the forest but none of them worked. Not even the slightest bit. Either they were using the wrong method or they had not found the right blood source. Back then, the Gongjia ancestors had discovered the method of using blood to refine swords. It was extremely difficult, or perhaps they were extremely lucky. So, not all of them can be used. When Xiao Xian showed his results to the chiefs and team leaders, all 5 of them were disappointed. However, sometimes, one could not be too demanding. To be able to obtain these copper ores and successfully refine weapons was already very exciting. One step at a time. While Xiao Xian and the chiefs were experimenting with beast blood, some unwelcome guests arrived. There were 15 of them. They were from the Mang tribe, 8 Limbs tribe and Feather tribe. These 3 tribes were considered the 3 largest tribes in the central region. Other than the Mang, 8 Limbs and Feather tribes, there were also the Thousand Masks and Longboat tribe in the central region, as well as the Hui tribe and Tianshan tribe in the grasslands. This was 7 of them. Although the Wuxia tribe was also listed as one of the 8 tribes, this was not true. If it were not for the many slave owners standing behind them, they would not have the status they had today. They would have been destroyed by the other big tribes. People from other small and medium-sized tribes were afraid of the Wuxia tribe. After all, the Wuxia tribe was known for its bad behavior. People could only feel lucky that the Wuxia tribe was not located in the central region where the tribes were the densest and the soil was the most fertile. Later, when Yanjiao appeared, many people still had the idea of watching a good show. They wondered when the 2 tribes would fight, but they didn't expect that the 2 tribes would be in a deadlock until now. Many people were still discussing how Wuxia's people could endure until now. Was it because they didn't want to make a move, or was it because they couldn't? The people of the Yanjiao tribe didn't know, nor were they interested in knowing. Xiao Xian knew the 3 leaders of the 3 tribes, Huang Yi of the Mang tribe, Xiu Gu of the 8 Limbs tribe, and Gu Ji of the Feather tribe. It was probably because these 3 people had been to the Yanjiao tribe before and still remembered this place, so they were allowed to come this time. As Xiao Xian expected, these 3 people first went to the Lu tribe and asked the people of the Lu tribe about what happened here. After Yan Jiu and the others of the Lu tribe returned, in order to get satisfactory results and not to return empty-handed, they could only come to the Yanjiao tribe again. In fact, when they went to the desert to find the Yanjiao people, they were just curious and thought it was no big deal to bring 3 people along. When they arrived at the desert, they completely ignored Xiao Xian and the others. Later, they didn't expect such a big change in the desert. When they ran, they didn't see Xiao Xian and the others, so they didn't look for them. Huang Yi left a letter and left the desert with the others. After that, Yanjiao and the 7 major tribes basically lost contact. Except for the Hui tribe who came twice because of the Cha-Cha, the other tribes never set foot in this place again. This time, there was no other way. When they came near the fearsome beast forest, the people of the 3 major tribes also felt the difference. Other than the Wuxia tribe that Yan Jiu told them didn't appear, they could also feel the difference in the Yanjiao tribe. When they came last time, although they could clearly feel the rejection of the Yanjiao fire seed, they were already used to it. The major tribes in the central region often interacted with each other, so after a long time, they didn't think much of it. But it was different this time. The rejection of the fire seed was very small, or even non-existent, but they still felt uncomfortable all over. It was even worse than the last time they came. Is it really because of the fire seed? Huang Yi thought about what their shaman said. Was the fire seed of the Yanjiao tribe really gone? The eight limbs Chogu, who always had a smile on his face, had a serious look on his face. There was no smile on his face at all. His narrowed eyes flashed with deep thought. It seems that the Yanjiao tribe has many secrets. I just don't know if they can reveal any of this secret. Gu Ji of the Feather tribe sighed. With the previous experience, they didn't let the birds that followed them run around. The group of 15 people came on the Feather tribe's birds. These birds were very uneasy when they arrived at the fearsome beast forest. If it weren't for the Feather tribe's people trying their best to calm them down, they would have flown away long ago. Birds that were used to other places in the central region might not be able to adapt to the atmosphere here. More importantly, the people hiding in the forest didn't like them. These birds could feel the other party's attitude. The patrolling soldiers received the order and reluctantly led these people into the tribe. In the past, they really wanted to interact with these people more, especially when they first came to the old haunt. They were curious about people and things, and wanted to get to know more people from other tribes. Unfortunately, these people didn't seem very enthusiastic. Plus, after what happened in the desert, the soldiers didn't smile at them. They were even on guard. This time, the 15 people who entered the Yanjiao tribe didn't have as much freedom as last time. They were watched along the way. They were led directly to the stone house where they would meet the guests. Although they couldn't see what the other places were like, Huang Yi and the others noticed that there were many more houses here. They were more densely packed, and the arrangement of the houses wasn't messy either. It was as if they had been specially planned. It didn't seem like a disaster had happened in the Yanjiao tribe. Most people were in a good mood. So, the speculation about a disaster in Yanjiao was dismissed first. Of course, this was secondary. Huang Yi and the others realized that what scared them the most was the feeling the Yanjiao warriors gave them. They felt like something was wrong, but they couldn't put their finger on it. After all, they weren't shamans and weren't sensitive to the changes in the fire seed. In addition to the 2 shamans, the 2 chiefs and 3 team leaders also came to meet these people. Xiao Xian also stopped what he was doing and walked into the house. Last time when the 2 sides had a meeting, Ta and Gigu were standing. But this time, they were sitting down like Duo Kong. There was no need to be polite to these people. Huang Yi and the others looked at the people sitting across the stone table. They had a good memory, but they didn't have any impression of the 3 extra people this time. This time, we are also here to ask some questions. Huang Yi didn't intend to beat around the bush. He didn't like to beat around the bush. At the same time, he felt that the Yanjiao people shouldn't like this way of meeting, so he simply went straight to the point. A few days ago, we noticed something unusual here, so we came to have a look. I wonder if you can tell us why. Sorry, we can't tell you, the shaman said dryly. The others didn't say anything. The silent atmosphere in the house became stagnant and stiff. One side wanted to inquire about something, while the other side was too lazy to say anything. Huang Ye's eyes swept over the Yanjiao people and finally looked at Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian sighed softly. Although Huang Yi wasn't very likable sometimes, during the trip to the desert, compared to the others, he treated the 3 Yanjiao people well. Everything is fine here. As for the rest, it's Yanjiao's business. You don't have to worry about it. This meant that they shouldn't ask any more questions. Even if they did, they wouldn't be able to get an answer. Xiao Gu's narrowed eyes were slightly curved, looking like a kind elder. I know, because of what happened in the desert, you are angry. This is indeed our fault, Xiao Gu said. If you know it's wrong, why didn't you come earlier? Where have you been for the past 2 years? Did you just focus on robbing the desert? Duo Kong crossed his legs and squinted at the 3 people over there. He didn't give them any face at all. Perhaps these people in the old haunt weren't good with words. In the past, they spent most of their time in an environment isolated from the rest of the world. Every day and night, they faced their own people. Even if they had a conflict, they had a bottom line and a sense of propriety. Back and forth, they would say the same things. They couldn't go too far, otherwise they would be scolded by the shaman. After coming to the old haunt, when they went out to trade, they had met many people, but it had become a habit. Every year, they didn't have much time to go out, especially in the past 2 years. They basically stayed in the forest. The people in the old haunt were still the same. But Duo Kong and the others were different. When they were on the other side of the sea, they often quarreled with their neighbors, the Taiha tribe. They had a small quarrel every 3 days. When they were angry, they would expose each other's secrets. It was the same for other tribes. They were more casual and said whatever they wanted. After coming here, Duo Kong and the others also learned about the past, so when they heard what the other party said, Duo Kong couldn't help but mock them. Listening to these people's different words, Duo Kong only felt unhappy. In the past, he often saw the Taiha tribe and found them annoying. Now that he couldn't see them anymore, he missed them. No matter what, they were better than these people, right? After Duo Kong finished speaking, he raised his head and looked out of the window. When Huang Yi and the other two heard Duo Kang's words, they frowned at the same time. The matter of the bronze ware was no longer a secret. Since the slave owners had escaped from the desert, it was natural for some news to spread. Especially in the trading places where the trading teams were more concentrated, there were all kinds of news flying around. True and false, there were countless. But no matter whether it was true or false, the fact that the 7 major tribes robbed the slave owners was still known by everyone. Of course, for the tribes, this wasn't a shameful thing to say. On the contrary, being able to rob them proved that they had the strength and the means of the 7 major tribes. In addition, they robbed the slave owners, who were usually pretentious and always felt superior to others, so the people of the 7 major tribes were still very respectful of them. Huang Yi and the others thought the same as the others, but now listening to Duo Kang's words, they felt that it was very harsh. This tone was too sarcastic. Was he jealous of them? Chapter 506. As a tribe that robbed many slave owners in the desert and got a lot of gold wares, Huang Yi and the other 2 were prepared to be blackmailed before they entered the forest. They also brought a lot of gold wares with them this time. They thought that the Yinjiao people seldom went out of the forest and had limited knowledge, so they brought some inferior wares, most of which were bottles and pots, and few weapons. However, until now, Huang Yi and the other 2 didn't feel any sense of superiority. They even ignored the big wooden box they deliberately put on the open space next to them. They even left a gap in the wooden box, revealing a corner of the golden wares inside, which was very conspicuous under the light coming in from the window. However, these Yinjiao people didn't look at the box. Even if they saw it, they just glanced at it and then didn't look at it. Especially the man who spoke in a sarcastic tone just now, he even showed a contemptuous look when he looked at the box. Even when he glanced at them, the contempt didn't fade away. This made Huang Yi and the other 2 angry. When they were in other tribes, they had never been treated like this. Only these Yinjiao people could treat them like this. These Yinjiao people obviously wouldn't be persuaded by force or persuasion. If they didn't want to say anything, they wouldn't say anything no matter how they forced them. However, the secret of the fire seed was like a cat's paw, scratching their hearts from time to time. With the intention of giving it a try, Chiu Gu of the 8 Limbs tribe raised his hand and motioned the people standing behind him to open the box and take out the things inside. Maybe the box was placed at a bad angle, so these Yinjiao people didn't see it clearly. Or maybe they didn't see it completely, so they didn't know what was inside. Then let's broaden their horizons. When the box was opened, the golden light reflected on the wall inside the room. Exquisite wares were placed on the table, such as wine bottles, flagons, small tripods, and so on. Some of them had inscriptions and animal patterns on them, which looked really good. When Gu and the other two snatched these wares, they looked at them for a long time. When they brought them to the Yanjiao tribe, they were quite reluctant to part with them. However, in order to find out more information from the Yanjiao tribe, they had to pay a little. When the other tribes took out these gold wares, those people stared straight at them and couldn't wait to stretch their necks to take a closer look. They also symbolically gave out some gold wares as small gifts to the small and medium-sized tribes that they had dealings with in order to win the hearts of the people. Gu was very pleased with himself when he asked his men to display these items. You Yanjiao people have been holed up in this damned place all day long, so you've never seen anything like this before. However, Gu soon discovered that things were not as he had imagined. The 8 Yanjiao men across the table looked at Gu as if they were looking at an idiot. The smile on his face became more and more stiff. Duo Kong exhaled air from his nostrils and let out a strange laugh. The disdain in his eyes deepened. How could he show off such a small thing? It wasn't that Duo Kong looked down on them. There were very few gold wares here, and the tribesmen had even fewer. He knew this, so he didn't look down on them. He was angry that these people wanted to use these to open the Yanjiao people's mouths. These people must have gotten a lot of good things in the desert in the past 2 years. Knives, swords, spears, axes, armors, and the like. They must have gotten some, but what were these things on display? Things to eat, drink, and play with. Even when they were in the city, they wouldn't trade things for them. To them, these things were impractical. The slave masters could be extravagant, but they weren't to that extent. These things were just decorations. They couldn't be used to hunt or kill people, so what was the use of them? These people kept all the good things for themselves, and the things they displayed were all empty. Who were they trying to fool? Did they think that the Yanjiao people were as gullible as everyone else? The Feather Tribe's Guji, who had been sitting silently on the side, had been observing the Yanjiao people's expressions. When he saw the 8 Yanjiao people's expressions, his pupils suddenly shrank. These Yanjiao people didn't seem to be strangers to gold wares. Realizing that something was wrong, the 3 of them pondered over the reason and thought of a possibility at the same time. Could it be that those rumored people who came out of the desert were actually arranged there by the Yanjiao tribe? They just waited for the desert to become chaotic and then robbed the slave masters of their belongings. They thought they were a bunch of barbarians, but they didn't expect them to be so scheming. Sure enough, they were wrong about this group of people. Huang Yi and the other 2 people's thoughts raced at the same time. Their thoughts were like a runaway camel, running all over the desert in the face of a storm. How many things did the Yanjiao people get from the desert? No, that wasn't the point. What had happened to the fire seed of the Yanjiao people? They always felt that the Yanjiao tribe seemed to have more and more secrets. At this time, the people from the 3 tribes were more or less regretful. If they had taken the time to come here, maybe they could have eased the tension between the 2 sides. Unfortunately, at that time, all of their attention was on the desert. They had miscalculated. For a moment, the stone house fell into an awkward silence again. But Huang Yi and the other 2 people didn't achieve their goal, so they wouldn't give up so easily. Since these gold wares couldn't move people, they would change it. We were blind. We didn't know Yanjiao was also taking action. We made a fool of ourselves. Gu gave a self-deprecating laugh, but he did not ask the others to put away these dazzling objects. Since he had already taken them out, he had no intention of putting them away. Although these gold objects were precious, as a large tribe, they had to have the generosity of a large tribe. They could pick up and let go, and could not haggle over every ounce like those small tribes. They would treat these as an apology. As far as we know, many slave masters escaped from the desert, and most of these slave masters are now in one place. Gu pointed in the direction of the Wancher tribe. I know you've always wanted to get rid of that guy outside, but due to some reasons, you didn't do it. The so-called, due to some reasons, Xiao Gu himself didn't know. He thought it should be that the Yanjiao people didn't have enough confidence, so they didn't start the war. But if he said it directly, the Yanjiao people would feel embarrassed, so he expressed it in a roundabout way. In fact, we didn't like the Wanchur people, but because of the slave masters behind them, we didn't do anything. Now the situation in the desert is settled, and the people behind the Wanchur tribe have all escaped. They are no longer a threat. Xiao Gu's eyes widened slightly, trying to look more sincere. Why don't we cooperate? What do you think? That's right. Gu Ji also said, the Feather tribe is one of us. They also wanted to get rid of the Wanchur tribe and the slave masters who escaped, but they didn't have the time. Now they could use the power of Yanjiao to get rid of that trouble, and also ease the relationship with Yanjiao. It was indeed a good idea. The Mang tribe is one of us, Huang Yi said. They talked excitedly, but the Yanjiao people didn't say anything. After the other side finished speaking and stopped, Ao said, we appreciate the three of your good intentions. We'd better solve the problem of the Wanchur tribe by ourselves. They didn't expect the Yanjiao people to refuse. Xiao Gu and the other two people didn't understand. Cooperation was a win-win situation. Why couldn't these people think it through? The Wanchur tribe wasn't easy to deal with. Although the slave masters escaped, they still had power, especially the slaves in their hands. None of them were afraid of death. They had experienced it many times in the desert, so the Yanjiao people should understand. Why let their emotions affect their decisions? Stupid, short-sighted, ignorant. As soon as Ao finished, Zheng Luo said, if you want to deal with the Wanchur tribe, why don't we let you go first? I heard that the big tribes in the central region have good relations. It shouldn't be difficult to attack the Wanchur tribe together. Zheng Luo's meaning was simple, if you can do it, then do it. If you can't, then don't talk nonsense. We'll do it. What's the point of giving so many reasons? Who didn't have an open mind? On the other side of the sea, Zheng Luo and the others often dealt with caravans, so they were smart. When Xiao Gu said this, he knew what he meant, so he wasn't in a good mood. You want to use us as weapons, and you want us to be grateful? No way. You think we can't do it without you? Although the Yanjiao people here knew that cooperation would save them a lot of trouble, what would happen after this was over? These people would probably start blackmailing them. Besides, they weren't even fighting yet. Would the Yanjiao tribe dare to cooperate with these people? They didn't even have sincerity, how could they cooperate? They were far worse than the Taiha tribe. After Duo Kong, Zheng Luo's mind wandered as he thought of their good neighbor, the Taiha tribe. Xiao Gu and the others fell silent again. They had thought about it before, but they didn't plan to act immediately. Although they had gained a lot in the desert 2 years ago, the tribe had also suffered losses and needed time to recover. If it wasn't for the Yanjiao fire seed, they wouldn't have proposed cooperation to attack the Wanchur tribe. Other than that, they weren't that determined to destroy the Wanchur tribe. After all, the Wanchur tribe's existence could keep Yanjiao in check. With them, Yanjiao wouldn't be able to dominate this region. If Yanjiao rose up, it would be a threat to them. Xiao Xian could guess what they were thinking, but he knew Yanjiao's character. This time, Yanjiao really did plan to go it alone. They would use the Wanchur tribe as their first test after the merger. In a place like this, if you wanted to gain status, you had to fight for it. This was the most primitive rule. Xiao Xian was willing to bet that if Yanjiao agreed to cooperate today, even if the Wanchur tribe was destroyed, people would say that Yanjiao had borrowed the glory of the other tribes. If that happened, the shaman would vomit blood. To the Yanjiao people, lost glory had to be won back by themselves. Borrowing the strength of others wasn't considered a success. This was what the Yanjiao people insisted on. If they wanted Yanjiao to return to its peak, the Wanchur tribe was undoubtedly a good stepping stone. Only one person could stand on this stepping stone. It could only be Yanjiao. Our tribe has its own arrangements for the Wuxia tribe. You don't have to worry about it, Xiao Xian said. Xiao Gu and the other two still didn't give up. They tried their best to persuade Yanjiao, but Yanjiao's attitude was still stiff. When they were asked to leave the forest, Xiao Gu and the other two were still puzzled. Why were the Yanjiao people so stubborn? Do you think Yanjiao people really want to go to war with the Wuxia tribe? Xiao Gu asked the other two. It's hard to say. Although the Yanjiao people's attitude seems obvious, who knows what their real intention is? Gu Ji had already labeled the Yanjiao people as super scheming. Let's wait and see. If they really have such an idea, the war won't be far away, Huang Yi said in a low voice. Yanjiao people were as stubborn as ever. It was really a headache. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.